Howdy, friends. How is everybody? I mean, no one's here at the moment, but as we get started, hello, welcome. Those of you who are watching the restream, hello. I'll wait to say hello for once the chat fills up. For now, we're just getting ready to pick up where we left off. We're gonna be going through not so much the Citadel this time. Definitely getting Liara, and then we'll decide what to do next. I'm thinking about the DLC where we save a planet from an asteroid and that sort of thing. Which, incidentally, I've never actually played that part before. Never played that. Bring Down the Sky, it's called. I have not played that before, so I don't know what that's gonna be like. So we're gonna see. It should be fun. Hopefully, I managed to fix some of the frame rate issues from last time, but I haven't been able to test it so much. So we're gonna have to wait and see. Hopefully, the problem gets at least somewhat fixed and it gets a little better. If it is not fixed at all, then well, we'll see. We'll work on it as we can, but hopefully the frame rate will be a little bit better this time. All right. Hey, Kylie. See you in the chat. All right. So as I've mentioned on the Facebook page, if you're following, I did just finish up today. I edits on a draft for an article that'll be coming out in Rebus, which I don't remember what that stands for, but it's it's the faculty, basically the faculty magazine for St. Leo. So if you are around for St. Leo, check that out. If you're not, keep following my social media stuff, and I will see if I can get a link to it at least. Possibly even a version of it. If I can, great. If not, we'll see. Yeah, that is, Mrs. McCoy. Very good point. If it's not fixed, there's a very good chance it's Spectrum's fault, not the stream's fault, because it's probably a connectivity thing. I'm going to mess with that and see if that lags, because if that lags, then, oh no, well, okay, that's a little better. It's not, that's not quite lagging. So, as I mentioned, a couple of things I'm really going to want to talk about tonight. Loriella, hello. I really hope I'm just, saying this all right, yeah. But, apologies in advance. Whoever's usernames I wind up horrifyingly butchering, will live. I'm sure it shouldn't injure anybody. In any case, there are a few things I really want to talk about tonight. One is the whole question of the sacramental life for aliens. Loriella, you're asking about how far we got last time. So last time we just left the Citadel, and we did a little bit of planet scanning and exploring in the Mako, just kind of messing around in the galaxy. We recruited everybody but Liara, and we completely forgot to talk to Harkin, the drunk C-Sec agent. So I guess he exists still, but somewhere. This time we're going to be picking up... my plan is to go straight to Therum to pick up Liara, to go through that mission. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Then eventually, like I said, we're probably next. I want to do Bring Down the Sky, because I've never done it before. That is the DLC with the Batarians who are trying to do terrorism stuff because they're Batarians and, harmful stereotypes in video games. Yes, Kylie, we did meet Conrad Werner on the Citadel for the first time. We're going to keep seeing him as we keep going. Next time we come back to the Citadel, which we should at least at some point today. We'll see if... see how far we go and see what we wind up getting caught up doing. I am open to changing that plan, so after we wind up getting Liara, things kind of open up in terms of the story plot. So if we do want to do something else, you guys feel free to direct me in whatever direction. Also, I don't know whether I'll be doing Noveria or Pharos first, so the other two major planets. So those of you familiar with the storyline and you want to see one or the other of them sooner rather than later, just let me know. I'll see what I can do. Anyway, I'm gonna get us started and resume while I continue talking about what I'm planning on talking about. Like I said, I really want to talk about the potential sacramental life for aliens. So, can we baptize aliens, and related questions. Already in the description, there are some relevant links about those sorts of questions. Some papal encyclicals that are, I think, relevant or barely relevant, maybe a little bit relevant. And here's where we were. What happened? There we go. They're at least a little bit relevant, not really that relevant, but a little bit. And then further, I also probably am going to at least briefly mention what I was talking about, where the article that I just finished a draft of today. So let's. There is some drop frames. Oh, sure. How's that? Is that any better? Keep me posted. Make sure my volume mixing isn't terrible. I know it's cutting out, kind of getting out, but there we go. If it's still a problem, let me know. But yeah, I wanted to at least briefly mention that. And whatever else comes up as we go forward, I'm sure there is going to be more interesting stuff. Oh, and I also, in the last week, I watched all of Star Trek Picard. And if you have seen it, then you have seen the plot of this game. So that's that. I'm almost certain it was unintentional because they had Diana Troy, and it's if it had been intentional, I'm sure that they would have had a nod to that or something, and that's and they didn't. It was just a funny little self-indulgent cameo. All right, how's that? I turned it down quite a bit. If it's not, if at this point, if it still winds up being too loud, I'll fix it as we go forward. For now, hopefully that'll do. So let's watch our mass relay little cutscene. Neat. So in celebration of Picard basically just using the plot for Mass Effect 1. If you've seen it, then you'll probably notice the similarities. It involves synthetic life forms doing evil things and summoning ancient synthetic, basically Reapers. And Picard having a high enough Paragon score at the end to skip the main boss fight. She is not in this system. I'm not gonna do too much of the exploring stuff on stream. I'll probably come back and do that as we go between actual streams. But for now, let's actually get to wherever the mission is. I actually don't remember what system it is, so I'll have to guess and check. Nope. Athens. Proteus. Survey. No, it's not it. It's just gas. Oxygen. I will find it. Oh. Maybe it was Macedon. Oh, jeez, that's why. This is it, I think. If this is the wrong place, then we're going to explore a planet. We'll see. I think this is the right one, but I could be totally wrong. To get Liara, I think we want Caden. And let's go with Garrus. Actually, no. We want Tally and Garrus because, Gath. Yeah, Gath. Lots of Gath. Hey, you changed your... I assume you changed your name. I'm pretty sure that's the same you. Oh, wait. No, this is totally not the right place, but fine, whatever. I'll just do the stuff here, then. Alright, well, anyway, while we're traversing an open planet, briefly, I want to touch on Picard, because I kind of wanted to talk about this. It's not really what I was planning on, but I did watch it over this last week or so. Yeah, it says that YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain a smooth stream. If that explains any drop frames, then again, I think it's an internet connection problem because it's not a streaming software problem. So yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that. Yeah, I will eventually, hopefully... How do I get out? There we go. Eventually, I will hopefully fix that. The lag problem. Yeah. Do I need either of these? Ooh, I do need that. I don't need that. Yeah, I will hopefully fix the lag problem eventually. I don't exactly know what's causing it. I think it has to do with the internet connection, quite honestly. And if I could get an actual hardwire connection in this room, which is unlikely, I might be able to fix that a little bit. That might make things better. See, I'm working on Wi-Fi, so hopefully that may wind up being the problem, and I might be able to eventually fix it. Anyway, what I was talking about, Star Trek Picard, the new series, combat, is bizarre for Star Trek. I actually did like it, thought it was good, but the tone is so unlike Star Trek, because it makes Mass Effect look light and lighthearted, sort of by comparison, which Star Trek should not. Star Trek should absolutely be light and happy and optimistic and all of that. Picard was anything but optimistic, and that is just very bizarre for a Star Trek series. It did not feel like Star Trek. That said, I did overall like the plot. I liked the character stuff. I love the pilot guy with the holograms. If you saw it, it was neat. If you haven't seen it, then I do recommend it. I will mention that CBS All Access has a free trial thingy for it. I think it's like specifically marketed for Picard, so feel free to check it out. Try not to give them your credit card information, so that kind of thing.
Perimeter clear.
Hey, a building. So let's go in. But yeah, I did like it. I thought it was good. That said, the plot was very much just Mass Effect, just a little bit different. Obviously, there were differences in terms of the the technology and whatnot. Fine, but that's my warp. Forget how to use warp. Anyway, so obviously, there are different, setting differences, but in terms of the actual, the overall plot, it's very similar. In that both are fundamentally about this issue of AI and what are the potential problems and solutions to AI advancing, which is one of the really fundamental tropes of science fiction, and it's been a while since Star Trek has covered that. Some of the best stories have involved holodecks, and this really didn't at all. It was about whether advanced machine intelligence. Yeah, yeah, hardline option box in the office. I will look into it. I cannot give any guarantees about that, just because of the location of where our outlet thing is, our cable outlet basically is, because it's in the bedroom.
Hold the line!
You must die! You must die!
There's somebody up there. Oh, never mind. She's there. Really sorry about the lag, guys.
All clear.
In any case, it even involves the whole, get the basically summon the Reapers at the end, and it even has a cool little thing where, apparently, like I said, Captain Picard has a high enough Paragon score at the end that he can just skip the final boss fight, and that's really good because if he hadn't been able to, it was one of those things where it did not look. It didn't look good. Oh, this is just... Oh, I think I know what side quest this is for. Okay. I know what that side quest this is for. I haven't picked it up yet, but eventually I will. Anyway. Regardless, it was a good show. It was very, very closely tied to Mass Effect. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it was unintentional. I think it was just they used a lot of the same sci-fi tropes. Maybe some of the writers were or had played Mass Effect recently or otherwise. Because I think part of it, I mean, if they had done it intentionally, if it were meant as a nod or something like that, I don't need any of this stuff. If it were meant as a nod to Mass Effect, I am absolutely certain that they would have used something. They would have had some reference with Diana Troy, because she's the same voice actress. She's the actress is the same woman who plays Matriarch Benezia here. Hey, Nasana Dantius. Oh yeah, so that basically bypassed a quest, so that's cool. Anyway, but yeah, it's if it had, like I said, if it had been an actual nod to Mass Effect, it would have. I suspect that the writers would have made some kind of reference and had Diana Troy have something like a similar role in it, or I don't know, something similar to what Matriarch Benezia plays. Or they just didn't want to, admit to it. I guess, I don't know. Who knows? We may never know. I would find it hilarious if this somehow goes to court or something over I guess intellectual property concerns, which, I mean, whatever. I actually don't see much of a problem with it. It is honestly, it's the closest thing that we will probably get to something like a Mass Effect movie or TV show, and we get to watch it with Captain Picard instead of Shepard. So that's all right. That's okay. Anyway, so the other topics I wanted to mention, I'll discuss the kind of minor one first. Was what I wanted to talk about, the article I have forthcoming. Short version. I'm not going to just go through the whole thing just now, just because I don't want to go through and spoil the whole thing. But looking forward, it is going to be on the difference in sort of the history of political thought, the difference between how we conceptualize. I have to be flat. How we conceptualize authority and how we conceptualize power, and that these are two very different things that we very often conflate, especially in the modern context. So I wind up taking a look at various historical sources. So primarily looking at Cassius Dio, the Roman historian, what he has to say about Emperor Augustus Caesar. I look at Pope Gelasius I and what's called his Two Swords doctrine, which basically gets turned into something like separation of church and state. But I'll again argue that winds up being a bit of a misuse of the it's the wrong application of this same kind of problem, if you will. I should quick save before this. Forgot to do that. These are kind of important. Oops. Also, I got junk. Oh, jeez. Don't need it. Don't need it. Oops. Totally didn't mean to take that, but whatever. Those actually become important very much later. So, all right, that's all for that. Anyway, that's what you guys have to look forward to. I will keep everybody posted as it approaches. But yeah, if you have any questions about the history of it, or if there's anything more that you want to know, or if you're interested in that sort of thing, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer questions having to do with that sort of topic. It's not really relevant to much of what we're doing here, so I don't really have too much else to say about it. But otherwise, I'm, I think, ready to move on and talk some about aliens and religion and the sacraments. As I mentioned, I have a couple of sources in the description if you want to check those out later. One of which I found really useful on this topic, and I don't agree with it 100%. I don't agree completely with what's said, but one of the possibly useful ones is a podcast episode from an apologist named Jimmy Akin, who is incredibly well read. Where is it? It's on, I thought it was Theorem. Is it? It's a terrestrial planet. Let's keep running around. I will find Liara eventually. Is it this one? No. Theorem. There it is. Finally. But so a lot of the podcast, and honestly a lot of the literature surrounding this question is highly speculative, and it is because of how speculative it is, because we don't actually know about aliens, right? We don't have real contact with extraterrestrial life. It has to necessarily be tentative and be really high level kind of considerations.
Commander, I'm picking up some strange readings. Really strange, like off the damn charts. It looks like it's coming from an underground complex a few clicks away from the drop zone.
Let's go where Joker says. But yeah, and the problem is that we don't, like, if we're being realistic, if we're talking about reality, we don't know what alien life might be like. If there is such a thing, we don't know what it is. And this is a problem if we're trying to speculate about theology and about the religious implications for these things, because we don't know. For example, we don't know if alien life would be. We don't know what their biology would be like. We don't know how they act, how they think. We don't know if they're sapient, if they're rational animals like we are. We don't know if they're. There's a weird lighting thing. Oh, that's what it was. Right. So there is more that we don't know, and so more we can't answer than we can. So if we do have this, we do try and answer these questions hypothetically, we have to do so either, one of two ways. We can either be very vague and just start talking about the abstract principles that we could use once we, sort of the abstract principles we could use to solve these questions when we encounter, if and when, I suppose, we encounter advanced extraterrestrial life. Or we can take a hypothetical to sort of apply those principles and sort of nail them down. because we're playing Mass Effect and because we're talking about it and because the world building for this game is actually very extensive, I want to do the latter. Basically, I want to go through and see what we can answer, assuming that this is how things go. This is what extraterrestrial life ends up being like. So if that does, if it, I mean, obviously,
the front door seems stupid. Maybe we could find a side window.
It's almost certain that we are not going to encounter a extraterrestrial life that is exactly like we see in this particular game series. That's patently absurd, right? We're not gonna. Turians and Quarians and Asari are almost certainly not real. The likelihood of that is practically zero. And yet, if we take this as a hypothetical, if we take the world as built by Mass Effect as a kind of hypothetical case, and we use it like it's a case study, then what that does is that allows us to answer these sorts of questions in a coherent manner, in a way that has particular, concrete, real answers to these complex questions. Like, hold on. Let me see if I can kill this guy in here. Problem solved. I think in there. Done. The less fighting I have to do on foot, the better. So let's see what we got over here. Anyway.
All targets down.
Yeah, I know. That is at least one of the benefits of science fiction, of speculative fiction in general, is that it allows us to consider strange hypotheticals and to apply what we know to new, uncertain situations that we otherwise wouldn't be able to sort of parse. I have almost infinite Omnigel at this point. Let me make sure everybody's properly equipped. Yeah. Yeah, that'll do. In any case, so what I kind of want to do while I'm discussing this is to take the example of Mass Effect and to sort of look at what we have here. Look at the examples that Mass Effect gives us in terms of what alien life could be like. And so if such creatures as Turians and Quarians and Asari and anything else, right? Hanar make interesting cases, of course. And Volus as well. If any of these do exist, like what if they did? What if these were really what aliens are like? If that is the case, oh, that didn't work, then we would have questions about, well, for example, what could the sacramental life be like for aliens? So, if you know this, if you know that whether you know or not, I'm Catholic, and so I do a lot of Catholic theology, and I study these sorts of things at least somewhat. Not as a professional theologian, but I do study these things from a philosophical standpoint. So, the questions of what are the natures of non-biologically human rational animals? What are they? And what differentiates them in a morally significant and a theologically significant manner from Homo sapiens, biological human beings? I talked about this before a couple weeks ago, that I tend to take the view, and this is probably controversial, and if not controversial, then certainly, even possibly, hopefully not incoherent, but it may have conceptual problems. Am I going the wrong way? that's right. That different biological species, so long as they are rational animals, and we can reasonably determine that they are relevantly similar to humans, insofar as they are, rational animals, and because of that, they presumably would bear the image and likeness of God, so to speak. Because what that would mean is essentially intellect and will. So if they have intellect and will, that means that they are what I would classify as human in the relevant sense. So even if we are biologically distinct, right, we're different species, different biological species, we're the same. We might say metaphysical species. We're the same thing. It's just our. I used a different analogy before, a different way of explaining this before, to put it into a bizarre bastardization of Aristotelian terms. We have the same genus, the same species, but we are of a different genus. So we have the same specific difference, the same thing that sets us apart together as rational animals, but we're different sorts of animals. All right, so the analogy I like to use for this is if you have, I'll tie it to this game, modify the example a little bit. Suppose you have a copy of Mass Effect 1, and you have it for PC. Then suppose you have another copy of Mass Effect 1, and you have it for what did it come out on, Xbox One? No, 360. Came out on 360. So suppose you have both of these two copies of the same game. They are the same game still, right? So they are the same. They share the same specific difference. They're the same species, if you will, but they are different things. All right, one is let's say a Steam copy, like mine is. So it is a digital, purely digital thing. And if we talk about the hardware, maybe it's on my hard drive, or it's on, maybe I can put it onto a high-capacity SD card or flash drive, that sort of thing. Maybe it is a CD, or a set of CD-ROMs. Whereas if I have the Xbox 360 version, it's on a DVD. Right? So the actual thing, the kind of thing that it is, whether that is a Steam game or a disc copy, or an Xbox 360 game or whatever, the genus for it is different. The other example I like to use for the same kind of thing is if you have a book. Right? You have say Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologiae, and you have two versions of it. You have an ebook, which is on an SD card, and you have you're supposed to die. And you have a codex, right? An ordinary paper page book. If you have both of these, they seem to be two different things. An SD card is very different from a codex. But if they are the same book, then even though they are of different genera, they're the same species. They're the same book. They have the same specific difference, and you might say the same formal cause, largely speaking, at least in the relevant sense. So we can say, perhaps, or at least I would like to say, something similar about different biological species of rational animals, that we are people, which is the relevant moral category. I would also argue that it's at least probably the relevant theological category. There we go. That if, I'm stuck. So Scripture says something along the lines of, I don't have the exact quote, but it's something like that the revelation is given once and for all to all mankind. Okay, and of course, Scripture talks a lot about mankind in different senses, and with different relevant factors. Oh, jeez. If I cut out for a little bit, you understand why. Garrett, stop. Okay.
That's the last of them.
Thanks, Tally. So if that is the case, right? If we are, if Revelation is directed towards all mankind, if that means all persons, or all rational animals, or all humans in this metaphysical rather than merely biological sense. What? Sniper. If that is the case, that we're talking about, oh jeez, Garrus is about to go down. I need to move forward.
Shield down.
Yeah, I know that. Then it stands to reason, if that is the case, if we're talking about different groups of humans with different biology, then it stands to reason that we would have the same, at least roughly speaking, the same,
Perimeter
we
clear.
could have, I should say, the same relationship to our common creator. These are the same kinds of questions, by the way, that were asked early on in the Age of Exploration, and that were answered in roughly the same way, right? That we appear to be encountering other human beings that have no relation to us, that are radically different from us. I don't need any of this stuff. I should save that. This is a terrible, terrible fight. I hate this so much. You guys are about to watch me die repeatedly. I'm just guessing. But in any case, it stands to reason that we would have either the same or similar sacramental lives. We could have the same or similar relationships to our common creator. The question, though, becomes the question that's often asked, at least the primary question that's often asked, is something along the lines of, well, do we in fact have that same relationship? If there are aliens, are they, for example, are they fallen? Or did they remain in a state of original justice, or sort of naive justice? If they did, then we have a very fundamentally different relationship between biological humans and God versus whatever other human, whatever we might want to call humans these are, would have to God. Get out. Oh, shit. Okay, this is bad. Get out. Okay. Oh, wait, I gave Tally explosive rounds, didn't I? Oh, damn. Okay, well, like I said, you're going to watch me die repeatedly here, because I hate this fight. I'm not very good at it, and it's been a long time. So let's try that again. Watch the damn cutscene again. F's in the chat, guys. Anyway. But like I was saying, a lot of times these kinds of discussions, the discussions of what how our salvation might differ between human beings and aliens, right? That's typically these kinds of discussions get sort of bogged down in matters of I can't skip it either. If anyone knows how I can skip this stupid cutscene, then please tell me. Every frickin' time. Because we have a nice hypothetical here, we can limit our discussion a little bit, and we can discuss what seems to be the case in this very particular context, rather than trying to discuss sort of everything at once and trying to settle all of our weird questions that we might have. We can instead settle the questions that come up simply based in this discussion, in the discussion of races we see and civilizations and people we see in this particular context, because this particular context, we have an interesting amount of detail. Now, it's not perfect. We don't know everything, right? For example, we don't technically know if the various biological species in Mass Effect are theologically human, let's say. And this is where we come into issues of I wonder if I can chuck it into the... No, I can't. I tried to chuck it into the lava, but... Really? Why did Tali not lead with that? Are you kidding me? I'm rather peeved. Rather peeved. I thought I had that. Alright, I'm going to order her to lead with the whole AI hacking thing next time. Oh, God. Alright, well, that was awful. Let's try that whole thing again. So in any case, there are two... yeah, I know, thanks. That was awful. But, so there's really two relevant factors to consider. One is metaphysical species. Right, and that is a question that I'm going to assume we have answered. That it is, it's at least plausible, it's at least feasible, and we can make it work to say that any rational animal is human in the relevant sense. Right? You've got Turian humans, you got human humans. Maybe you call them Homo sapiens humans, or maybe you call them human Homo sapiens. You get the idea. You got people. You have persons. You have rational animals. And you have them in different flavors. Whatever. Just because they are of different biological species doesn't mean they're different kinds of creatures in a fundamental sense. Let's do that real quick. And Tali, why are you blocked?
Soft skill deployed.
What? Really? You used all your powers. Great, alright. Well, let's just do it the hard way. That's real bad. Knock you over. Let's see this lift. Hooray! Save. Oh, are you kidding?
Negative contacts, Commander.
Yeah, negative contacts, I know. So can I save now? Okay, great. Whew! That was fun. Okay, great, got it. Got it. Alright, there we go. Problem solved for the moment. I think I have to go in there, so let me check my equipment first. Anyway, so if we're gonna So if we're going to assume that that all of these different species are human in the relevant sense, in more or less in the metaphysical sense, then we can move on to the other big question, which is the question of soteriology, salvation. If we are to assume that all of us meaning humans and Saurian, Quarians, and Turians, etc., if we are to assume that we are all fallen, which seems to be the case if we look at, let's call it evidence, I guess, we all do seem to be sinful. If that is the case, if we are all fallen, then that means that we presumably either are, the rest of the non-human species. They either, typically the answers go one of three things. Either they're all damned, which is sort of the Ken Ham view in that meme that I shared the other day. Maybe that was yesterday. Whatever.
It looks like this cavern formed around the ruin after it was built.
Neat. But yeah, it's either the Ken Ham view, right, which I do not buy into. I should let you know. The idea that that aliens are all damned because they're not human beings, and so they're not. They do need a savior, but they don't have one because Jesus was only a human. Was actually a human if we look at the historical record. Okay.
I wonder what Liara is looking for in here. Most Prothean ruins have nothing more than dead instrumentation.
But if that is the case, right? If it is the case that we that both of our squad mates here are human in the relevant sense, but not biologically human, well, we have two more options. Either each biological species, or maybe we should say each genealogical species, for it to be really precise, and I'll probably talk about why that isn't the case, why that's required in a minute.
Help me, please.
Help me, Shepherd Senpai. Okay, give me a second. Let me come back to this.
Can you hear me out there? I'm trapped. I need help.
Are you okay? What happened to you?
Listen, this thing I'm in is a Prothean security device. I cannot move, so I need you to get me out of it, all right?
How did you end up in there?
I was exploring the ruins when the Geth showed up, so I hid in here. Can you believe that? Geth, beyond the veil! I activated the tower's defenses. I knew the barrier curtains would keep them out. When I turned it on, I must have hit something I wasn't supposed to. I was trapped in here. You must get me out, please!
Your mother is working with Saren. Whose side are you on?
What? I am not on anybody's side. I may be Benezia's daughter, but I'm nothing like her. I have not spoken to her in years. Please, just get me out of here.
We just need to figure some way past this energy field.
It's a Prothean barrier curtain. I knew it would keep me safe from the Geth. When I turned it on, I must have hit something I wasn't supposed to. I was trapped in here. You must get me out, please.
Your mother is working with Saren.
Sorry, I already
I
said
may
that.
be Benezia's daughter.
just
It's
need
a When I turned it on, I must have hit something I
We'll
wasn't.
find some way to help
Oops.
you.
There is a control in here that should deactivate this thing. You'll have to find some way past the barrier curtain. That's the tricky part. The defenses cannot be shut off from the outside. I don't know how you'll get in here. Be careful. There is a Krogan with the Geth. They have been trying different ways to get past the barrier.
Okay, so imagine how Ben would have reacted if he knew how Shepard and Liara met. Oh no, you're another brain touching things you aren't supposed to. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's true. I mean, look, she's an archaeologist. It's better than Suvi, who almost dies because she licked something. A rock. Oh, that's so handy. There. Fine. Alright, anyway. But yeah, no, it,
Perimeter clear.
Listen, poking and prodding and messing with Prothean technology never goes well, ever, under any circumstances. Everyone in the galaxy knows this. It's pretty much established from the beginning when the first Prothean artifact you find almost kills both you and Caden, was it? I think it was Caden. But yeah, it's wildly dangerous. So of course, Liara just kind of just kind of pokes at it and hopes for the best. Yeah. So Mrs. McCoy says, there's a reason Suvi went to Andromeda. She's unhinged like everyone else who went. Yeah, so if you've played Andromeda, I have this theory that that basically everybody who went to Andromeda is a crazy person and is in some way either mentally or at least socially unstable. And the reasoning I have for this is, who else but a person with nothing to lose and nothing to gain would decide to take a one-way 600-year journey between galaxies never to hear from home again? You're only going to get weirdos who volunteer for that sort of thing. So of course people like the entire cast of Andromeda went. Of course they're a bunch of misfits and a bunch of strange people. What else could you possibly expect? It actually makes a weird amount of sense. In that context, at least. Nope. So this is where I got that puzzle. There we go. It's like Simon Says, but there's no says. It's just guess. You can imagine if there were a penalty for failure on the damn thing. And by you can imagine, I mean, Rally, you don't need to imagine. Anyway, I will probably get back to what I was talking about after we finish rescuing Liara, talking about possibility of alien salvation and all that kind of stuff, because it's super interesting and relevant.
How did you get in here? I didn't think there was any way past the barrier.
We blasted through with the mining laser.
Of course. Yes, that makes sense. Please, get me out of here before more Geth arrive. That button over there should shut down this containment field.
Any idea how we get out of this place?
There is an elevator back in the center of the tower. At least I think it's an elevator. It should take us out of here. Come on! I still cannot believe all this. Why would the Geth come after me? Do you think Benezia's involved?
Seren's looking for the conduit. You're a Prothean expert. He probably wants you to help him find it.
The conduit, but I don't know.
What the hell was that?
Uh-oh.
These ruins are not stable. That mining laser must have triggered a seismic event. We have to hurry. The whole place is caving in.
Joker, get the Normandy airborne and lock in on my signal. On the double, mister!
Aye, aye, Commander. Secure and away. ETA 8 minutes.
He needs to move faster.
Okay. So, we're about to completely destroy ancient, priceless artifacts, so that's cool. Yeah, I did just mute it. Listen. Blame Kylie. She texted me for some reason. I assume I'll find out the reason when I actually look, but after this stream, come on, guys. You know better than that. Or I should actually know better to not have my phone, but anyway. Let's not surrender.
In case you didn't notice, this place is falling apart.
Exhilarating, isn't it? Thanks for getting rid of those energy fields for us. Hand the doctor over.
Whatever it is you want, you are not getting it from me.
Yeah, Mr. McCoy says, oh look, the part of the game I gave up on even on the easiest setting while playing the game as an adept. Inconveniently, I'm playing the game as a even less optimized class, and so we'll see how this goes. I am almost max leveled, so it should be a little bit better, but we'll see.
She'll stay with us, thanks.
Not an option. Saren wants her, and he always gets what he wants. Kill him. Spare the Asari if you can. If not, doesn't matter.
Okay. Let's be careful about this. How about I need Tally? Oh wait, why can't I? Oh, there. I need a rocket trooper to be hacked. I want this Battlemaster to be overloaded. And then right.
Watch out!
He's gonna get back up. I suspect. Wait, really? Oh. I think it's because I warped him.
Too close, Commander. 10 more seconds we would have been swimming in molten sulfur. The Normandy isn't equipped to land in exploding volcanoes. They tend to fry our sensors and melt our hull. Just for future reference.
We almost died out there, and your pilot is making jokes?
It's a coping mechanism. You'll get used to it.
I see. It must be a human thing. I don't have a lot of experience dealing with your species, Commander. But I am grateful to you. You saved my life back there, and not just from the volcano. Those Geth would have killed me or dragged me off to Saren.
What did Saren want with you? Do you know something about the conduit?
Only that it was somehow connected to the Prothean extinction. That is my real area of expertise. I have spent the past 50 years trying to figure out what happened to them.
Just how old are you exactly?
I hate to admit it, but I am only 106.
Damn! I hope I look that good when I'm your age.
A century may seem like a long time to a short-lived species like yours, but among the Asari I am barely considered more than a child. That is why my research has not received the attention it deserves. Because of my youth, other Asari scholars tend to dismiss my theories on what happened to the Protheans.
I've got my own theory on why the Protheans disappeared.
With all due respect, Commander, I have heard every theory out there. The problem is finding evidence to support them. The Protheans left remarkably little behind. It is almost as if someone did not want the mystery solved. It is like someone came along after the Protheans were gone and cleansed the galaxy of clues. But here is the incredible part. According to my findings, the Protheans were not the first galactic civilization to mysteriously vanish. This cycle began long before them.
Okay, so I just realized that the last time I'm pretty sure the last time I played Mass Effect 1, and last time I heard that line was, I think, before I started teaching. Might have even been back when I was an undergrad. And, wow, Shepard was just, that is one of the more rude things you can possibly say to an academic is, hey, you're an expert in this field. I've got my own theory about so-and-so and such and such. It's basically everything I ever hear the moment I tell anyone that I'm a philosopher, especially if, like, I'm at a bar or something. They're like, oh, yeah, I know, I've got this cool philosophical theory. I'm like, okay, that's nice. Neat. Anyway, it's the annoyance that Liara must have felt there is absolutely hilarious to me, and I had never really noticed that before. So neat. Anyway, so for perspective, that's a thing that academics have to suffer through.
Where'd you come up with this theory? I thought there wasn't any evidence.
I have been working on this for 50 years. I have tracked down every scrap and shred of evidence. Eventually, subtle patterns start to emerge, patterns that hint at the truth. It is difficult to explain to someone else. I cannot point to one specific thing to prove my case. It is more a feeling derived from a half-century of dedicated research. But I know I'm right, and eventually I will be able to prove it. There were other civilizations before the Protheans. This cycle has repeated itself many times over.
If the Protheans weren't the first, then who was?
I don't know. There is barely any evidence on the Protheans, even less on those who came before them. I cannot prove my theory, but I know I am right. The galaxy is built on a cycle of extinction. Each time a great civilization rises up, it is suddenly and violently cast down. Only ruins survive. The Protheans rose up from a single world until their empire spanned the entire galaxy. Yet even they climbed to the top on the remains of those who came before. Their greatest achievements, the mass relays and the Citadel, are based on the technology of those who came before them. And then, like all the other forgotten civilizations throughout galactic history, the Protheans disappeared. I have dedicated my life to figuring out why.
They were wiped out by a race of sentient machines, the Reapers.
The Reapers? But I have never heard of. How do you know this? What evidence do you have?
There was a damaged Prothean beacon on Eden Prime. It burned a vision into my brain. I'm still trying to sort out what it all means.
Visions? Yes, that makes sense. The beacons were designed to transmit information directly into the mind of the user. Finding one that still works is extremely rare. No wonder the Geth attacked Eden Prime. The chance to acquire a working beacon, even a badly damaged one, is worth almost any risk. But the beacons were only programmed to interact with Prothean physiology. Whatever information you received would have been confused, unclear. I am amazed you were able to make sense of it at all. A lesser mind would have been utterly destroyed by the process. You must be remarkably strong-willed, Commander.
This isn't helping us find Saren, or the conduit.
Of course, you're right. I am sorry, my scientific curiosity got the better of me. Unfortunately, I do not have any information that could help you find the conduit, or Saren.
Kylie, see what I mean when I said, oh look, it's Shepard Senpai. Yeah, she's very, Lyra's very much like that, especially in the first game.
I don't know why Saren wanted you out of the picture, but I think we'll be a lot better off if we bring you along.
Thank you, Commander. Saren might come after me again. I cannot think of anywhere safer than here on your ship. And my knowledge of the Protheans might be useful later on.
And her biotics will come in handy when the fighting starts.
Good to have you on the team, Liara.
Thank you, Commander. I am very grateful. Oh, I am afraid I am feeling a bit lightheaded.
When was the last time you ate? Or slept? Dr. Chakwa should take a look at you.
It is probably just mental exhaustion, coupled with the shock of discovering the Protheans' true fate. I need some time to process all this. Still, it could not hurt to be examined by a medical professional. It will give me the chance to think things over. Are we finished here, Commander?
We can talk again after you've seen the doctor. The rest of you, dismissed.
Mission reports are filed, Commander. You want me to patch you through to the Council?
Patch him through,
Okay, guys, should I hang up on the Council
now,
or no?
Commander.
We've received your report, Commander. I understand Dr. Tassoni is on the Normandy.
I assume you're taking the necessary security precautions.
Liara's on our side. The Geth were trying to kill her.
Benezia would never allow Saren to kill her daughter.
Maybe she doesn't know.
Or maybe we don't know her. We never expected she could become a traitor.
At least the mission was a success.
Apart from the utter destruction of a major Prothean ruin. Was that really necessary, Shepard?
Kylie says, sounds like every college student during finals week. Yes, everyone in the immediate vicinity of a college. I'm sure faculty and staff, that applies just as well.
The Geth were crawling all over those ruins. We were lucky to make it out alive.
Of course, Commander. The mission must always take priority.
Good luck, Commander. Remember, we are all counting on you.
Huh. Maybe I could have hung up on them, but hey, I didn't have the chance to. They were relatively kind, except for that Turian. He's kind of a dick. That's okay. He's a Turian. It's kind of what we expect at this point. So I'll wander around for a little bit, wander around the ship, and talk about some of the things I wanted to talk about.
If anyone has to take over for Captain Anderson, I'm glad it's you. I'm not sure about having non-humans on our ship, though.
Speak freely, Presley. I want to know if you have a problem with non-humans.
It's not that, Commander. Humanity has always handled its own problems. Saren attacked one of our colonies. We should be the ones to stop him. We don't need their help.
I think this really represents the renegade type decision making quite well, especially in the later games, in 2 and 3. That is, it's not just being a dick, because like I keep saying, you can be a dick and still be Paragon. And you actually are kind of nice to some people, even if you're renegade. But it's a more of a matter of this is our problem and we're going to handle it, and you're going to toe the line, versus we need to work together on this to solve the problem. We're part of the galactic community. We're doing our part, they're doing their part, and we're going to work together on it, that sort of thing.
Some people think asking for help is a sign of weakness. That's just being stupid and stubborn. No matter how strong you are, allies can make you stronger.
I guess so. Maybe I'm just stuck in the old ways of thinking. But don't worry, Commander. This won't be a problem.
How did you end up assigned to the Normandy?
I signed up with the Alliance as a navigator right out of school, following in my grandfather's footsteps, I guess. My first posting was on the Agincourt. We were at Elysium during the Skillian Blitz. A massive fleet of alien raiders hit the colony, trying to wipe it out. They had the numbers, but their ships were no match for an Alliance frigate. It was a slaughter. We couldn't even keep track of how many ships they lost.
How'd you end up on the Normandy?
I got my officer's commission after Elysium. Must have made an impression on the right people. Captain asked for me when he was picking his crew.
Carry on, Presley.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, what was I saying before that? So I wanted to do, now I think I can finally move on to talk some about what's it called? About, what? I don't need any of this. About what I was just saying, having to do with salvation, potential salvation soteriology with respect to aliens. So, given that, supposing that aliens are fallen, right, that they are not in a state of original naive, original justice or naive sinlessness, call it what you want. Given that, we're left with two options, and of course, given that they are not all damned by necessity, just simply not having salvation available to them. If they have salvation available to them, it could be in one of roughly two ways. Either they're saved just like we could be, and that is through Christ, Christ's human nature. The time God became incarnate on Earth. Let's do that because we ought to. Let's give her better armor. That one? Yeah, much better. Ooh. That's crap. Let me go through and get rid of some of this crap too. Oh my god. Meanwhile, as I was saying, we're left with two real options. Either they're saved, just like we are, through Christ's sacrifice as a human, God becoming incarnate on Earth as a human being, biologically human, Homo sapiens, that sort of thing, on Earth in roughly 33 AD, just like we are, or we could be. The alternative is that they have that each other species has its own means of salvation, which is not through the same means. It is through something else. The potential problem with that is that we don't have any reason or any evidence for thinking that is the case. Rather, what we see is differences in religious beliefs among different species. We don't actually see anything like soteriological beliefs among other races. We see other religious beliefs. We see things like the Asari goddess worship, which is kind of implied that it has some connection to Protheans, which is a little bit odd. It makes sense in a really, really basic way, but we see the Solarians having a belief in what they call the Wheel of Life, something like reincarnation and unity with the cosmos, that sort of thing. We see crap. In any case, we see Turians worshiping spirits, and of course these are spirits in something like what we would call the Aristotelian sense. Spirits as in the spirit of a place or of a location or of a group of people or that sort of thing. Definitely medical exoskeleton. Yeah. But if that's the case, right? If we do have this,
looking for supplies.
If we have these different
Let's see what you got.
religious beliefs, and none of them seem to really line up, then what we have is we have a bit of a problem. It's that we don't seem to have revelation, which says that yes, wonderful. Yeah, there we go. We don't seem to have revelation which says anything relevantly similar. We don't have revelation saying, or giving us a means of potential salvation for other races in the same sort of way that we would have for salvation for human beings, for us biological humans. So because we don't have any evidence at all to say that there would have been other means of salvation extended to other species, it seems reasonable, I think, in this particular context, and if this is the kind of thing that we observe if and when we make contact with rational animals, with other alien species, if that is the case, and if that's what we observe, I think it would be reasonable to assume at that point that aliens are saved through the same means, or can be saved through the same means that we are. This presents some solutions. In other words, it makes sense of our contact with aliens in the same way that if all human beings are saved through sort of the new Israel, so through the church, then that makes sense of the gradual expanding and the gradual uniting of the human community through intercultural contact, that sort of thing. But if that's the case, we have a couple of related problems. Now, other things that this I think makes one of these potential problems if we look at the Mass Effect universe, life has been developing and being destroyed for millions of years. Right? There have been hundreds, maybe thousands or more cycles of the extinction cycles with the Reapers. If that is the case, then salvation is something new, is something very new on the scale of galactic history. That it seems odd, if nothing else, that God's plan for salvation was after the extinction of countless trillions of people. That seems weird, to say the absolute least. It's probably, it may even be worse than weird. Right? It may even be a genuine theological problem. If it is a genuine theological problem, then we have to figure out a solution to it. Well, I think I'll put a link in the description once we're done with this stream of something that C.S. Lewis, an essay from C.S. Lewis, who he had something similar to, he noticed a similar problem with respect to the actual human community on Earth. That it seems strange, the atheist at least will say that it seems very strange, that God would only select one tribe of people to be the conduit of salvation, even though there are, at this point, billions of humans, and there have been trillions throughout history. That seems very narrow, very small-minded for God. What was that? It was a thing. It was a codex entry thing. Yes, that. But Lewis points out that no, that's how things always have worked for basically all of human history and everything relevant to human history. Right? Every major development starts somewhere and spreads. Right? The same even goes for biological evolution. The developments start somewhere and then they spread. Humans ourselves started somewhere and then spread. So it would make sense that revelation begins in one place and then very, very gradually spreads. So why would it not begin in one place, and that place happens to be a particular spot on Earth, and then spread, not just throughout the Earth, but throughout the galaxy? Because why not? Why would that not be the case? Lewis, in his own space trilogy, his own science fiction, took a different approach and asked, well, what if there were unfallen aliens? And what if there were eternally damned aliens? Again, different approach to it, and it asks and answers different, still interesting questions. But in this particular context here, if we're talking about, aliens who we know are fallen, but we don't know that they have, or we don't have any reason to think that they have any particular means of salvation apart from us, apart from, Christ. Us. I did not mean to just conflate us and Christ there. That's heinous. But in a situation like this, we would have no reason to suspect anything else other than to say that, well, yeah, salvation started in one particular place, and salvation history unfolds to the rest of the galaxy from there, because why not? Sure, that makes enough sense. Not a problem. So in any case, that is, I think, the an answer to that particular problem. Let's talk to Caden about him, and then I want to go to another potential problem, because there's at least one or two more.
Commander, do you have a minute?
I always make time for my officers.
Off the record, I think there's something wrong here. This Saren is looking for records on some kind of galactic extinction, but we can't get backup from the Council? Sorry, Commander. There's writing on the wall here, but someone isn't reading it.
The Council doesn't want to believe anything's wrong. I'd call it human nature, but...
I hear you. It just seems like a group that's been around as long as the Council should see this coming. I mean, it's funny, we finally get out here, and the final frontier was already settled. and the residents don't even seem impressed by the view. Or the dangers.
Well, well. You're a romantic. Did you sign on for the dream, Malenko? Secure a man's future in space?
Yeah, I read a lot of those books when I was a kid, where the hero goes to space to prove himself worthy of a woman he loves, or, you know, for justice. Maybe I was a romantic in the beginning, but I thought about it after brain camp. Biotic acclimation and temperance training. I'm not looking for the dream. I just want to do some good. See what's out here. Sorry if I got too informal. Protocol wasn't a big focus back in Bot.
Tell me about it.
Biotic acclimation and temperance didn't last past the airlock. To the kids they hauled in, it was brain camp. Sorry, hauled in is unkind. We were encouraged to commit to an evaluation of our abilities so an understanding of biotics could be compiled. There are worse results of accidental exposure to element 0 in the womb. Beats the brain tumors some kids grew up with.
I love how Shepard can read the subtitles and see that there are quotation marks around accidental.
Is there some question about how you were exposed?
My mother was downwind of a transport crash. It was before there were human biotics, a little after the discovery of the Martian ruins. It only gets iffy around 63 when Kinetics was running out of first-gen subjects. Until then, they'd relied on accidentals. A bunch of guys in suits show up at your door after school, and next thing you know, you're out on Jump Zero.
Jump Zero is Gagarin Station, right? What's it like?
Yeah, that's the official name. Biggest and farthest facility we had for decades. Right on the termination shock, the outer edge of the solar system. It's where they did all the Goose Chase FTL research before we caught on to using mass effect fields. It was a sterile research platform when I was there.
I have no idea what Goose Chase FTL research is. I'm guessing something like warp drives, but I really don't know. Interesting.
You know of any intentional exposures for certain?
No one knows. Doesn't mean they didn't happen. As big as the exposures were, it was hard to track down accidentals. It was different then. No one knew the potential, so there wasn't a lot of regulation. Anything Kinetics did was gold. I'm not saying they intentionally detonated drives over our outposts, but in retrospect, they were damn quick on the scene.
There were other kids in the same boat, right? At least you weren't alone out there.
That's true. We did have a little circle that'd get together every night before lights out. We didn't have much to do, though. It was a research platform then, and Kinetics kept Jump Zero off the extranet to prevent leaks.
Then you must have had plenty of time to get to know each other.
Yeah, we'd sit around and bull every night after dinner, play cards or network games. There was this girl named Rana, who had a little circle grow up around her. She was from Turkey. Her family was very rich. But she was smart and charming as hell. Beautiful, but not stuck up about it. Like you, I guess. Ma'am.
Ma'am.
Sounds like she was special to you.
She was. Maybe she felt the same. But things never felt together. Training, you know.
Jump Zero's a long way from home. What was it like?
The grand gateway to humanity looks a lot better in the vids. Anyway, this was supposed to be a casual debrief, not a bull session about stuff that happened years ago.
We have to depend on each other in combat. I like knowing what kind of man I have at my back.
I understand, ma'am. I won't let you down. You, make a habit of getting this personal with everyone?
No, I don't. We'll talk again later.
That was not my intention there, but okay.
I'll need some time to process that.
Damn it, what have I done?
But, yeah, I'd like that.
Okay, well, I didn't intend that, but okay. That happened. So Mass Effect 1 has a problem with sneaking romance onto you. That's a thing that happens, especially in Mass Effect 1. It's an early BioWare problem. It got a little clearer later on, but yeah, if you basically worth noting, unless you try really, really hard not to, you will end up in a relationship with Liara in Mass Effect 1. That's how it works. Just as a thing. I am probably going to romance Liara for interesting philosophical reasons that I'm going to talk about. Listen, don't lead the poor man on. I listen. I'm not saying I want that scene about the love triangle. But I'm also not saying that I'm not going to get the scene with the love triangle. Anyway.
Yes, Commander? Is there
let's
something
talk
you
to
need?
the doctor.
How did you end up serving on an Alliance ship?
I enlisted right out of med school. Earth always seemed boring to me. Too safe. Too secure. I figured the colonies were teeming with exotic adventure. I wanted to travel the stars, tending the wounds of tough soldiers with piercing eyes and sensitive souls. Turns out military life isn't quite as romantic as I'd imagined. But humanity needs the Alliance if we want to keep expanding through the Traverse, and the Alliance always needs good doctors. So I stayed on to do my part.
Ever think you made the wrong choice?
Sometimes I think about opening a private practice back on Earth, or maybe taking a position at one of the new med centers out in the colonies. But there's something special about working on soldiers. If I left the Alliance now, I'd feel like I was abandoning them.
I should go.
Goodbye, Commander.
Oops, wrong way.
Commander, are you coming to check up on me?
Yeah, so Kylie says, ooh, I smell a romance. BioWare games are dating simulators with guns. Or blasters, if it's a Star Wars one. Or swords, and magic, if it's Dragon Age, Jade Empire. Basically, BioWare has a reputation for actually writing decently good romance into the games. If you're not familiar with BioWare games, it's one of their major calling cards.
You look much better. How are you feeling?
Dr. Chakwas assures me I am going to be fine. I was impressed with her knowledge of Asari physiology.
You're in good hands. Dr. Chakwas knows what she's doing.
I never properly thanked you for saving me from the Geth, Commander. If you hadn't shown up,
I'm just glad we got there in time.
So am I. I know you took a chance bringing me aboard this ship. I have seen the way your crew looks at me. They do not trust me. But I am not like Benezia. I will do whatever I can to help you stop Saren. I promise.
Don't worry, Liara. I trust you. I know you won't let me down.
It means a lot to hear you say that, Commander. Thank you.
Do you know why Benezia joined up with Saren?
I don't understand it. She was always outspoken about the need for the Asari to become more involved in shaping galactic events. Maybe she thought allying herself with Saren would somehow be for the greater good in the long run. At least I hope so.
This hurts you, doesn't it?
None of this makes any sense to me. I have not spoken to Benezia in many years, but I know her, and this was not like her. Something changed.
I'd like to know more about the Asari.
We were the first species to discover the Citadel. We were instrumental in forming the Council, and we always strive to be the voice of peaceful cooperation in galactic disputes. My people believe we are all part of a single galactic community. Each species contributes something to the greater whole. Although we seek to understand other species, it seems few of them seek to understand us. The galaxy is filled with rumors and misinformation about my people.
Like what?
Most of the inaccuracies are centered around our mating rituals. My species is monogendered. Male and female have no real meaning for us. We still require a partner to reproduce. This second parent, however, may be of any species and any gender.
This is the way to not romance Liara.
I don't understand. Your species can mate with anyone?
Mating is not quite the proper term, not as you understand it. Physical contact may or may not be involved, but it is not an essential element of the union. The true connection is mental. Our physiology allows us to meld with other beings. We can touch the very depths of their minds. We explore the genetic memory of their species. We share the most basic elements of their individual and racial identities. We then pass these traits on to our daughters. It is how we learn to grow as a species and how we develop a greater understanding of other races.
What happens to your partner after the union?
Every relationship is different. Some unions are a single encounter with both parents parting ways afterwards. Others can be more long-term. Sometimes an Asari and her partner will stay together for many decades.
Do you know who Matriarch Benezia chose as her partner?
She rarely spoke of her partner. Though I know my father, if you want to use that term, was another Asari.
Kylie, like a Vulcan mind meld? Yes, very much like a Vulcan mind meld, plus... Oh, okay, wait, no, hold on. I was going to say plus a sexual element to it, but no, Vulcan mind melds were actually used throughout a lot of parts of the series as kind of a sexual allegory anyway. So yeah, pretty much just like a Vulcan mind meld. The funny thing about that is part of something that we're probably not going to get to this time, and we'll get to in one of the upcoming streams if we do this again next week. Is another element that they lifted straight from Mass Effect into Picard, which was sharing the vision of impending doom and destruction through a Vulcan mind meld, which is basically done in this game through an Asari mind meld, if you want to call it that. So yeah, they're very, very parallel. So this game borrowed elements from Star Trek, and then I guess Star Trek sort of borrowed back. It's just they borrowed back a little more directly, let's say. But yeah, it's pretty similar.
I thought you always needed another species to serve as one of the parents.
Think about it, Shepard. If we were not able to mate with our own species, we would have died out long before we ever mastered spaceflight and left our homeworld. Union with our own kind is no longer common, not for the purposes of reproduction. Most Asari believe it weakens our species. Asari daughters inherit racial traits from the father species. If both parents are Asari, then nothing has been gained, or so conventional wisdom would hold. I am what is sometimes called a pureblood, though no Asari would ever be cruel enough to say the word to my face. It is a great insult among my people. It is possible Benezia's partner was embarrassed by their union. She may have been too ashamed to publicly acknowledge me as her offspring.
How could anyone abandon their own child?
I cannot answer that. This is all speculation on my part. It is possible she wanted to be part of my life, but something happened to her before she had the chance. Benezia never spoke of her partner. Whatever happened, it caused her too much pain to dwell on it. She raised me by herself, though that is not uncommon. Many Asari raise their children alone, particularly if the father species is short-lived. Often the partner will pass on long before the child reaches maturity.
You actually meet her father later on in one of the later games. She's much nicer than Benezia.
You Asari live for 1,000 years. What happens when your partner dies?
Few sapient species live as long as my kind. We have learned to take a philosophical approach to our unions. We do not focus on the inevitable loss of our partners. Instead, we enjoy the time we spend with them. And even after they're gone, a part of them lives on in us. The union is a connection that transcends both time and space.
Yeah, this is very, very, very stoic. I'll put a link as well once after the stream is over. I'll put a link to my video on Stoicism, which Epictetus, one of the early Stoics, talks a lot about the potential loss of a partner. I'm gonna
Do you know who Matriarch Benezia
go back through this really quick.
Spoke of her partner. Though I know my father...
Benezia never told you her partner's name?
Union with
Missed
our
a
own
dialogue
kind
option.
is no longer common. Not for the purpose...
Oh.
Sorry, I am... It is possible Benezia's partner was embarrassed by their...
How could anyone...
Many Asari raise their children alone, particularly if the father species is short-lived.
Okay, that's all.
Often the partner will pass on long before the child reaches maturity.
I should go.
Goodbye, Commander.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find. Mrs. McCoy says it was also scarier. So I assume you're talking about the scene of impending destruction. I take it, or are you talking about Liara's father? In any case, I will put up. I'll put up links to. I'll try and find a clip of both the vision from Star Trek Picard and the vision from Mass Effect 1. Put them next to each other because holy crap, they're identical. if you're talking about Liara's father, I don't know if I would say scarier, because Benezia literally tries to kill you and almost succeeds. Spoiler warning? But I don't know if I would say she's scarier. I don't know if I'd quite go that far. She's more of a shotgun dad, let's be honest. All right. Let's go through and talk to our crew while we're going through.
Nice work out there. I knew working with a Spectre would be better than life at CSEC.
Have you worked with the Spectre before?
Well, no, but I know what they're like. Spectres make their own rules. You're free to handle things your way. At CSEC, you're buried by rules. The damn bureaucrats are always on your back.
Being a Spectre does have its advantages.
Exactly my point. If I'm trying to take down a suspect, it shouldn't matter how I do it, as long as I do it.
But CSEC wants it done their way. Protocol and procedure come first. That's why I left.
So you just quit because you didn't like the way they do things?
There's more to it than that. It didn't start out bad, but as I rose in ranks, I got saddled with more and more red tape. CSEC's handling of Saren was typical. I just couldn't take it anymore. I hate leaving.
I hope you made the right choice. I'd hate for you to regret it later.
Well, that's sort of why I teamed up with you. It's a chance for me to get off the Citadel, see how things are done outside CSEC. Either way, I plan to make the most of this.
And without CSEC headquarters looking over my shoulder, well, maybe I can get the job done my way for a change.
If getting the job done means endangering innocent people, then no. We get the job done right, not fast. Got it?
I wasn't trying to. I understand, Commander.
Sorry, Garrus, but don't just start randomly shooting people. We know how that... Well, those of you who played the later games know how that turns out.
Commander?
What's your opinion of the last mission?
Not sure I buy Dr. Tassoni's story about her and her mom not talking. They're family, right?
I think she's being straight with us. Or at least I don't think she lies very often.
Yeah, she's probably really bad at it. Too bad those ruins got destroyed. I mean, they lasted thousands of years. That's impressive.
Do you have a few minutes to talk? One-on-one?
Sure. I was hoping to get a minute of your time off the record.
All right, so McCoy says, so this is in the context of our Mass Effect RPG, our tabletop. If Ben were given the choice, he would rather fight a Benezia type than have to convince Dad to let him marry Helene. So Helene being an NPC, sorry. All right, I'll give you that's fair. That's a fair point. I forget if we determined who and what Helene's father was. I think we did, but I don't remember what or who. Or if he or she was still alive.
I keep an open door policy. If you have any concerns, lay them on me.
All right. I know things are different aboard the Normandy, but I'm concerned about the aliens, Vicarian and Rex. With all due respect, Commander, should they have full access to the ship?
They may not serve the Alliance, Chief, but they're allies, at least as far as Saren goes.
This is the most advanced ship in the Alliance Navy. I don't think we should give them free rein to poke around the vital systems. Engines, sensors, weapons.
You don't trust the Alliance's allies?
I'm not sure I'd call the Council races allies.
Yeah, he may have been a Solarian.
We,
might be right.
Humanity, have to learn to rely on ourselves.
Standing up for ourselves doesn't mean standing alone.
I don't think we should turn down allies. I just think we shouldn't bet everything on them staying allies. As noble as the council members seem now, if their backs are against the wall, they'll abandon us.
I don't see that as inevitable.
Look, if you're fighting a bear and the only way for you to survive is to sick your dog on it and run, you'll do it. As much as you love your dog, it isn't human. It's not
that's
racism,
a little bit
not
racist.
Really. Members of their species will always be more important to them than humans are.
Like I was saying in the past, that is a little bit racist comparing other species to subhuman animals. Right? But again, it comes back to in-group preference rather than trusting the out-group, that sort of thing. We've talked about this a lot, especially in the first stream. So if you want to hear more on this, go back to that and rewatch.
These seem like deeply held beliefs, Williams. What made you think this way?
My family's defended the Alliance since it was founded. My father, grandfather, great-grandmother, they all picked up a rifle and swore the oath of service. I guess we just tend to think of Earth's interests as our own.
Again, totally fair. That seems more like patriotism to me than it does like racism. Ashley gets a really bad reputation for being a space racist, but for the most part, she's really not. She's more like I said, she's more like a patriot. She more wants Earth's interest pursued rather than anything else.
I come from a military family too. My parents were both Navy. Anybody in your family we might know?
Couldn't say, Commander. We probably have a lot in common. You join up to carry on the tradition?
Is she an idealist? Or is she a romantic? Probably more the idealist.
Mainly I wanted to serve. Protect the Alliance. Save lives. You know?
Glad to hear it. I'd hate to think you were out here for a free college education.
That seems like a jab at a lot of people. Oof.
It doesn't sound like you've worked with aliens before.
No, ma'am. Mainly I've been groundside, part of the surface garrison forces. I did get a rotation on a space station for training. Every Marine a rifleman, every rifleman ZG certified.
That's odd. Your record is spotless and your technical scores are exemplary. You should be serving with the fleet.
Anyway, that's why I haven't served with many aliens, Commander.
You didn't answer the question, but okay.
Alright, I can see where your concerns are coming from, Williams. But this is a multilateral mission. You're gonna have to work with aliens, like it or not.
It won't be a problem, Commander. You say jump, I say how high. You tell me to kiss a Turian, I'll ask which cheek.
I don't think kissing Turians will be necessary.
You never know, Commander.
Well, I mean...
Dismissed, Chief.
Ma'am.
Garrus is not a romance option in the first game.
Shepard, what can I do for you?
What's your story, Rex?
There's no story. Go ask the Quarian if you want stories.
You Krogans live for centuries. Don't tell me you haven't had a few interesting adventures.
Well, there was this one time the Turians almost wiped out our entire race. That was fun.
I heard about that. You know, they almost did the same to us.
It's not the same.
It seems pretty much the same to me.
So your people were infected with a genetic mutation? An infection that makes only a few in 1,000 children survive birth? And I suppose it's destroying your entire species?
I suppose it isn't all the same.
I don't expect you to understand, but don't compare humanity's fate with the Krogan.
I was just making conversation. I wasn't trying to upset you.
Your ignorance doesn't upset me, Shepard. As for the Krogan, I gave up on them long ago. The genophage infected us, but it's not what's killing us.
What can you tell me about the genophage?
Ask the Solarians if you want details. They made it. All I know, it makes breeding nearly impossible. Thousands die in stillbirth, and most never get that far. Every Krogan is infected, every one, and no one's rushing to find a cure.
Why don't the Krogan try to find a cure?
When was the last time you saw a Krogan scientist? You ask a Krogan, would he rather find a cure for the genophage or fight for credits? He'll choose fighting every time. It's just who we are, Shepard. I can't change that. Nobody can.
Are your people really dying?
We're sure not getting any stronger. We're too spread out. None of us are interested in staying in our own system.
Lots of species have left their homes and prospered.
But they go to colonize new worlds. We're not settlers. We're warriors. We want to fight. So we leave. Hire ourselves out. And most of us never go back.
So long, Rex.
Shepard.
So yeah, that is horrifying. Yeah, so there's a lot of history to that, and that kind of explains the desperation as to why that happened. But it basically, so I'll just run you through the short version if you're not familiar with it. The Solarians and the Asari, who were at the Citadel, or the Citadel races at the time, did something stupid. They encountered the Rachni, which were an ancient race of very, very technologically advanced, powerful bug people who were incredibly hostile. They, along with the Turians, who I think at that point just began on the council, the Solarians uplifted the Krogan, basically gave the Krogan technology. Lots and lots of technology, so they could be used as shock troops to fight the Rachni. They fought the Rachni, drove them back. As far as they know, wiped them out. We'll see that isn't quite the case. But then the Krogan, being not ready for technology of this stage, started expanding wildly. This led to the Krogan rebellions. The Turians showed up and joined in the galactic community. That's how they got their council seat, in order to fight back the Krogan. The Turians used the Solarian-designed genophage to poison the entire Krogan species and effectively do a 1,400-year-long genocide, which is about how long it's been, give or take, at this point. It's mostly the Solarians' fault, but it's also the Turians' fault to an extent, and of course the Krogan for being imperialists. I mentioned that we have very good reason to believe that all of the species throughout the galaxy are fallen, are subject to original sin. Well, here's some of that evidence. So let's talk to Presley, let's talk to Tally, then we will buzz around the galaxy for a little while, look at some planets, and then while I continue talking about what we were talking about, and then I think we should have time to
Hey, Commander, you know that Quarian
bring
Tally?
down the
She's been
sky.
spending all her time down here asking me about our engines.
I'll tell her to leave you alone.
What? No, she's amazing. I wish my guys were half as smart as she is. Give her a month on board and she'll know more about our engines than I do. She's got a real knack for technology, that one. I can see why you wanted her to come along.
I figured she'd be a real asset to the team.
You got an eye for Tally, Commander, but I'm guessing that's not why you came down here.
Fill me in on the IES stealth system. How does it work exactly?
You can't hide a ship out in space. They emit too much heat and radiation. Too easy for sensors to pick them up, unless you find a way to capture those emissions. So our stealth systems trap the energy we give off in storage sinks built into the ship itself. No emissions to give away our location. Eventually the sinks have to be vented. More than a few hours silent running and they overheat. Cook us inside our own hull.
There's no way for anyone to detect us?
A visual scan can still pick us up. Anyone looking out a window can see us plain as day. But you have to be pretty close to get an actual visual out in space. Most vessels rely on scanners. As long as the stealth systems are engaged, they can't see us. Not unless we accelerate to FTL speeds.
Why doesn't it work with faster-than-light travel?
Cranking up to FTL blue shifts our emissions, pushes them into frequencies too high to capture in the sinks. As soon as we make the jump, it's like setting off a flare. Sensors can pick up our location whenever we enter or exit FTL flight, but for short-range missions, our stealth systems are amazing, and we've got the only one.
I want to know more about the Normandy.
She's the best ship I've ever served on, probably the fastest vessel ever designed, and she's the only one using the new Tantalus drive core.
What's so special about the Tantalus drive core?
Proportionally, it's about twice the size of any other vessel. Not only are we faster, but we can run at FTL speeds longer before we have to discharge the core.
Where else have you served, Adams?
If you name a class of Alliance ship, I've probably served on it. Everything from dreadnoughts and carriers right down to frigates like the Normandy. My last assignment was on the Tokyo. Only a cruiser, but she was a good ship. Couldn't hold a candle to the Normandy, though.
Carry on, Adams.
Aye, aye, Commander.
Alright, and Tally.
Your ship's amazing, Shepard. I've never seen a drive core like this before. I can't believe you were able to fit it into a ship this small. I'm starting to understand why you humans have been so successful. I had no idea Alliance vessels were so advanced.
The Normandy's a prototype, cutting-edge technology.
A month ago, I was patching a makeshift fuel line into a converted tug ship in the flotilla. Now, I'm sitting on board one of the most advanced vessels in Citadel space. I have to thank you again for bringing me along. Traveling on a vessel like this is a dream come true for me.
I had no idea you found ship technology so interesting.
It comes with being a Quarian. The migrant fleet is the key to the survival of my people. Ships are our most valuable resource. But we don't have anything like this. We make do with cast-offs and second-hand equipment. We just try to keep them running for as long as we can. Some of the fleet's larger vessels date all the way back to our original flight from the Geth.
I can't believe your fleet's still using ships that are 3 centuries old.
They're constantly being repaired, modified, and refitted. They aren't pretty, but they work. Mostly. We've tried to make ourselves as independent as possible on the flotilla. Grow our own food, mine, and process our own fuel. But some things we just can't make on our own. A patch to maintain the hull integrity requires raw materials we just don't have. That's why our pilgrimages are so important.
I want to know more about the pilgrimage.
When my people reach maturity, we leave our birth ships and seek acceptance with a new crew. It's necessary to maintain genetic diversity among the fleet. But no ship wants to accept someone who will be a burden on them. So, to prove our worth, we embark on a pilgrimage. We set out alone, leaving the flotilla and our families behind us. We only return once we have found something of value we can bring back to the fleet. This is presented as a gift to the captain of the respective ship we wish to join. If the gift is accepted, we are welcomed into the crew.
Can a captain choose to reject the gift?
That doesn't happen often. Most captains are eager to increase the size of their crew. It increases their own standing in our society. Even when a gift is not particularly valuable, the captain usually accepts it out of a sense of tradition. However, there is a stigma to presenting a substandard gift. It's not the best way to make a good impression on a new community. Most pilgrims don't return until they find something worthwhile.
I can't believe they just send you off alone.
It's not like they just cast us out. Before we leave, we are given lessons in how to survive outside the flotilla, and given gifts to help us on our journey. We also receive implants to fight off sickness and disease. Generations of living in an isolated and highly controlled environment have left our immune systems weaker than most. By the time we leave the fleet, we are well equipped for the pilgrimage. This is a rite of passage for all Quarians. If it were dangerous, our numbers would suffer. Virtually every pilgrimage ends with a triumphant return and the ritual presentation of the gift to one of the fleet's captains.
I want to talk about something else.
Like what?
Tell me about your people.
Our lives aren't easy. Resources are scarce, and we are constantly on the move. Everything we do must in some way contribute to the continuation of the migrant fleet. There are 17 million Quarians in the flotilla.
Kylie,
each
how's
of
that?
us relies on the others for survival. The bonds among my people are strong. Unfortunately, we have had to surrender many of the freedoms and civil liberties other species take for granted.
What kind of freedoms?
Well, it's illegal for parents to have more than one child. If our population grows too much, it would strain our resources to their breaking point. Of course, we also can't allow our numbers to become too few. If our population is in decline, the rule against single births is temporarily repealed. In extreme cases of population decline, incentives are even offered to encourage multiple births, though the Conclave hasn't had to take such measures in nearly a century.
That's also a recipe for population decline. That's not replacement rate, but okay.
That's your government.
The Conclave is our civilian branch of government. Each ship can elect a representative to serve on the Conclave and make decisions that affect the fleet as a whole. On matters that affect an individual ship, however, the captain has the final say. It's a tradition that dates back to the early days, when the fleet was governed by martial law. Fortunately, most captains nowadays are smart enough to have an elected council from their crew to give them advice and guidance.
So the ultimate power rests with elected officials?
In practice, the Conclave and the respective council for each ship tend to set the rules that govern our daily lives, but in theory we are still under military jurisdiction. The 5 top-ranking military officials in the fleet serve on the Admiralty Board. These 5 have the power to overrule any decision by the Conclave in case of emergency. To do so requires unanimous agreement among the Admiralty, and they can only do this once. After that, the entire board must resign their posts. It's a safeguard that served us well. In nearly 3 centuries, the Admiralty Board has only overruled the Conclave 4 times.
Reminds me of consulship in Republic in Rome. Worked fairly similarly because they served for a single year, but they could serve longer in military emergencies, where a consul would basically take unitary control of the entire military and the civilian apparatus of Rome, and then, but then afterwards I think they were banned from any public office after the end of their term. It might not have been quite that severe, but I know they couldn't serve as consul again. So this was one of those, yeah, you can take over completely in a case of emergency, but then you're out of politics entirely. So it was a check on that sort of thing. So Kylie says, the whole accepting area is fusing a gift reminds me of either Balthasar's or Augustine's idea on salvation. That's when I asked how so. Because, and I'm not sure if I'm remembering correctly, those who choose to accept the gift of salvation were the ones most likely to be saved. And those who decline the gift decline salvation. Balthasar, well, I know Balthasar was a hopeful universalist, so he assumed that everyone could be saved. You may also be thinking about Anselm, which we read, had a very giving and very receiving the gift that is offered kind of model that we read in our class rather than in Novak's class. But in any case, yeah, that sounds maybe Balthasarian. It's just Balthasar thought that everyone could perfectly well accept the gift, and there was no particular reason to think anyone did in fact refuse it. You're definitely not thinking of Calvin. Calvin held a double predestination. In other words, that that God chooses those who are saved and chooses those who are damned. Unilaterally, more or less. Who's a monergist, is the term. Mrs. McCoy says, now I'm imagining a one-child policy and forced abortions and sterilizations. Either that or the mom is kicked off the fleet and not welcome back. Wonder how that works. If it's not expanded on the Codex, I don't think that in particular is expanded on the Codex, and I don't even know if they continued that line of thought through to the 2nd and 3rd games. A lot of lore about the Quarians changed between 1 and 2. That might have been part of it. Yeah, I don't know what the practical aspects of it, and I haven't checked the first game's codex. I can look at it if you off stream. It's worth looking into. But yeah, those sorts of policies, if we look at our real world examples like China, are recipes for utter disaster. They never turn out as expected, and they are always go a bit. Let's say they go a bit further than limits on civil liberties, as Tally describes it, into the realm of tyrannical impositions and whatnot. Kylie says, my brain is mixing everything together, but I know someone said something like those who choose salvation were saved, and those who declined weren't saved. That's more or less the synergistic view. Augustine, at some points of when he was writing, held to something like that. Balthasar certainly does, but he thinks that everyone chooses salvation, or at least we have reason to think that everyone chooses salvation. Like I said, you might be thinking of Anselm. Because when we read Anselm's on freedom of choice, he talks about actually more so on the fall of the devil, that the good angels and thus saved humans choose to accept the gift of grace and of perseverance and rectitude, that whole thing, and so they receive it. And therefore God gives it, by contrast to choosing not to receive it, and therefore God does not grant it to them. That might be what you're thinking of. All right, what about the Geth?
I want to know more about the Geth.
I doubt I can tell you anything you don't already know. It's been almost 3 centuries since they drove my people into exile. All I know is the story of their origins, what they were when we created them, and how they turned on us.
For perspective, mid-19th century?
Interesting.
The Geth were originally created to serve as an automated manual labor force. Initially, their intelligence was as limited as any VI. Over time, we made small modifications to their programming to allow them to perform more varied and complex tasks, bringing them closer and closer to true AI status.
How come the Council didn't step in and stop you?
This wasn't true AI research. We may have been skirting the bounds of the law, but we never did anything that was actually illegal. The changes were so insignificant, so gradual, that we were able to control them. Or so we thought. But one thing we underestimated was the power of the neural network. 1 million Geth thinking simultaneously created an inherently unstable matrix.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the things they changed between 1 and 2. In 2, the Council outlawed AI research because of the Geth uprising. That might have been in 3, but at some point in the later games, they did retcon that. They changed that somewhat.
So the Geth share brainpower?
Many of the Geth's logic systems were designed to work in concert with other nearby Geth. Basically, the more of them you have in a group, the smarter they are.
This is, I think, a fascinating approach to AI that I don't know of really any other franchises that have done something quite similar. That it does have some potential to it, because a neural network like this can work something like more like a human mind, which maps onto what we know a lot about from machine learning. Especially interesting that our understanding of machine learning has developed a lot since this game came out in, I think, 2008. So that's they were maybe onto something in an interesting sort of way.
So there's some sort of group consciousness.
No, nothing like that. They cannot share sensory data or information. Their programming cannot handle that much simultaneous input. Each Geth maintains an individual awareness and identity. The neural network only operates on a process-based level. It's basically the synthetic equivalent of a subconscious. But when they're in close proximity, they can coordinate low-level functional processes, freeing up more capacity for original or independent thought.
Yeah, they definitely changed that later on into basically a hive mind, a consensus.
That doesn't make any sense.
I'm probably oversimplifying. The Geth are incredibly advanced and complex creations. All you need to know is that they get smarter when they gather in large numbers. As we built more and more Geth, their effective intelligence became more sophisticated, more abstract. One day, a Geth began to ask its Quarian overseer questions about the nature of its existence. Am I alive? Why am I here? What is my purpose? As you can imagine, this caused a near panic among my people.
I don't see what's so bad about those questions.
The Geth were created to engage in mundane, repetitive, or dangerous manual labor. That's fine for machines, but it won't satisfy a sentient being for long. The Geth were showing signs of rudimentary self-awareness and independent thought. If the Geth were intelligent, then we were essentially using them as slaves. It was inevitable the newly sentient Geth would rebel against their situation. We knew they would rise up against us, so we acted first. A general order went out across all Quarian-controlled systems to permanently deactivate all Geth. The Geth responded to this order violently.
Hey, you can't blame them for fighting for their survival.
We had no other choice. The Geth were already on the verge of revolution. By acting quickly, we had a chance to end the war before it began. The hope was that most of the Geth would still be little more than machines, incapable of organized resistance. But they had progressed much further than anyone anticipated. The war was long and bloody. Millions upon millions of Quarians died at their hands. In the end, we were forced to flee our own homeworld. We feared the Geth would pursue us, but they never came beyond the Veil. Now we drift through space, exile searching for a way to reclaim what was once ours.
It's hard to feel sorry for you. Your ancestors tried to wipe out another species.
We made a mistake when we created the Geth in the first place, but we did not make a mistake when we went to war against them. If we had not acted, they would have wiped us out. They're a synthetic life form. They have no use for organics. None. Why do you think they cut themselves off from the rest of the galaxy? Why do you think they've killed every organic being who's ever tried to contact them?
They didn't kill Saren.
What does that tell you? The Geth are not innocent victims in all this. They're the enemy. They want to destroy us. Not just the Quarians. All organic life. That's why they've joined up with Saren. And that's why we have to stop him.
So this little plot is really the central theme of the Mass Effect trilogy, and really especially of Mass Effect 1, but really of all three of them, of this kind of organic-synthetic conflict. And it's, of course, the main plot that Picard lifted straight from it. Mrs. McCoy says, this is basically attempted genocide number 3 in the Mass Effect universe, after the Krogans and the Rachni. Yeah. Well, I mean, attempted genocide, like, 40,000,003, because the Reapers have genocided everyone forever. So there's that, too. This is not a... The setting is not a very super happy universe. That said, it is... Like I've said from the beginning of this series, it is hopeful in the sense that we're in a really crappy place, and things are crap, and things are awful, but we can make them better because we are better. And it depends on who you ask. It's either just humans, biological humans, or we could just mean we, as in, this cycle, people. People are really better and can be better.
I should go.
All right.
See you later.
So, anyway, I want to get back to talking about sacraments and aliens, because that's always fun. That is most of what I planned on really talking about tonight. So, in the next hour or so, I want to go through it and talk about some of this. So first of all, we can start from the beginning and talk about baptism. If it is the case that aliens are in need of salvation, which in Mass Effect they would seem to be, and if it is in fact the case that they have the same means of salvation that we do, then it stands to reason that one of those means would be baptism as the sacrament of initiation. If that's the case, then the question arises, are they the proper objects of baptism? And if they are humans in the relevant sense, then yes, they would be. So the question becomes, are they capable of receiving baptism? Well, presumably, yeah, most of them. The question arises, though, about those, if there are races who simply could not receive baptism. One that comes to mind may be the Volus. I can't go into the codex to actually look this up and check, but if I'm not mistaken, the Volus, let's zoom. The Volus, given that they exist in an environmental suit, and it is not just an environmental suit like the Quarians that is meant to keep disease out. It is an environmental suit that is also a pressure suit and a completely different environment. So they are extremely, if I remember correctly, low temperature, high pressure or is it high temperature, high pressure? They're ammonia-based life rather than carbon and nitrogen, like we are. So they breathe ammonia. What this could mean, and part of the potential problem with this, is that they may not be able to survive contact with water, which is the material element of baptism. It seems that they could be, I would think, but again, I might not be understanding Volus biology. But let's assume that they can't. Right? Even if they can't survive, contact with water, it would freeze them, or it would burn them. I forget if they're extremely high or extremely low temperature. I think they're extremely low temperature. So if liquid water would burn them, and in their native environment they could not have water poured or sprinkled over them in any way as to receive baptism. Part of what this could mean, and part of this might mean that they're incapable of being baptized, which would mean that they're incapable of entering into the church. Jimmy Aiken talks about this in the podcast episode that I was mentioning early on. I have a link to it below. I think we already did this place. Sargila, yeah, we did. Check that out if you're interested in that possible response. That said, I might have an alternative solution, and I don't actually know if this is theologically viable, let's say. Part of the question of what is the proper matter of baptism, like what do you actually need to baptize somebody? Well, typically we would say water. We need living water if possible, but just in general, water. In other words, flowing water. But if not, they need water. Water needs to be poured over in a certain formula in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, etc. Right? If that is the case, then, well, we have to define what is water in the relevant context.
Commander, I'm picking up a signal from the planet's surface. It looks like an automated distress beacon.
Neato. Let's go do that while we're at it. Edalus. Debris from the gas giant. Okay, cool. Let's go do it. This is probably just gonna be another Geth trap if I recall. Let's bring Liara this time and Tali. No combat whatsoever. We don't need combat. It's gonna be so bad. Anyway, but yeah, defining what is water sounds like a really, really strange thing in particularly in a scientific context, because we would define water by its chemical formula, right? By its we might even say its substantial form, by what water is made of. Because it's a purely material substance, it has purely material properties, so we would define it in terms of its material. Thank you. Mr. McCoy says, Volus come from Irun. High-pressure greenhouse atmosphere that supports ammonia-based biochemistry. So high pressure. Okay. High temperature, high pressure. So liquid water would freeze them? It would probably be harmful to them, is the point. Now, I don't actually know if that's the case. I'm a little hesitant to say that liquid water would cause harm to Volus. That seems odd. At least it seems possible that if liquid water were under sufficient pressure, if it were, say, in their atmosphere, then maybe it could be in a liquid state and it could make contact with them without boiling off and without damaging them. That at least seems like it could be the case. If that is the case, then great. Problem solved, and we don't even need to consider this. However, if that is not the case, and they are incapable of surviving immediate direct contact with liquid water, gotta need to level up Liara. If that is the case, and they are incapable of surviving contact with liquid water, we would have the problem that it seems that they could not receive the sacrament of baptism. But again, this gives us the question of what is water? How do we define water? I don't need first aid. I do need stasis. Definitely lift. So if that is the case, right? So if warp. Darn. There. Okay, that'll have to work. Let's see, I love that tab. Good. Alright, anyway. So if that is the case, and they are incapable of water baptism, of receiving water baptism in the ordinary sense, well, we are left with the question of what is water. Ordinarily, we would say water is H2O. But that's a very weird definition if you think about it. Because, particularly in the sacramental context, because if water is simply H2O, then that would include water vapor, that would include ice. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about liquid water. Oh. The surface temperature of a rune is 6 degrees Celsius. Alright. Wait, really? Alright, well this is no longer a problem, and I'm talking about nothing in this case, but fine. Whatever. In that case, this becomes an irrelevant discussion, but I guess it's still interesting as a hypothetical, so I'll finish up what I was talking about. Because, it does become relevant with respect to other sacraments, particularly with respect to the Eucharist, so fine. Alright, if the surface temperature of a rune is 6 degrees Celsius, then I'm sure it's perfectly fine and they could receive water baptism. But if they couldn't, if there were a species that could not receive water baptism, Jimmy Akin talks about some examples of this in science fiction, so we'll just go with it. Like I said, the question of what is water comes to mind, or is raised. Because we're talking about something other than simply, other than simple chemistry. Part of what we're looking at is the symbolic nature of the symbolic understanding of what about water is significant. And in this case, water is symbolically significant for baptism for two reasons. One, that it is what gives life. It is life-giving. Now, if we had a sort of biological organism that did not rely on water for life, then we would have to look at what does, in fact, give life. What is the source of life? What is the equivalent? What do they drink? What are they composed of? That sort of thing, which would lead me to believe possibly liquid ammonia in the case of Volus. Yeah, so Mrs. McCoy says that's 42.6 degrees Fahrenheit. It really makes no sense. And then again, ammonia, it's ammonia. I don't know the traits of that chemical. I think the point is that it's high pressure. So ammonia is liquid in very, very high pressure. Look at the thresher moth. This, by the way, is a thresher moth that I was talking about last time. Creature things. It's not the last of them, Liara. Do not lie. Do not lie to my audience. Where the hell is it? There it is. Oh, it's gonna take forever. You're not gonna pop up, are you? Oh god. Oh, that's very bad. Yeah, apparently it's not a Venusian greenhouse exactly. It's a Normandy-based atmosphere, works a little differently. Fine. I guess it's there's still this issue of we can still at least in theory discuss the issue of water baptism. The other key symbolic aspect of water when it comes to baptism is drowning. It is dying to oneself and rising to life. If in a case like that, in those terms, in terms of the symbolic structure there, a large part of what we're talking about.
These men were under the command of Admiral Kahoku. He will want to know what happened here.
Can I destroy this stupid beacon so no one else dies? No, I can't. Okay, great. Tally, you should have a shotgun. Anyway. Alright, well that was it. Let's go home. Back to the Normandy. Yeah, in any case, if we are talking about... I mean, we can assume that it is a Venusian hothouse. It's just further out into the solar system, or the sun, or its star is colder or something. So it still has a greenhouse effect that just doesn't get as hot as it does in our solar system, closer to the sun, like at Venus. So maybe that's it. I don't know. I searched here, right? Yeah. In any case, we can talk sensibly, we can reasonably discuss what is the equivalent of water for a particular biological species of a fundamentally different material nature. So if there were a very fundamentally different alien species, more different than the Volus, then presumably they would have something that is roughly equivalent to water. And if they have something that is roughly equivalent to water for their own particular needs, I'm going to have to come back here because I don't want to do another one of these on stream. These are annoying. If that is the case, then we can talk about water baptism using what would qualify as water to these people. Because again, water is we don't interact with water as if it is a particular chemical formula. Right? The accidents of water are the more important parts for us, especially for symbolic purposes. So given that is the case, I think we can have an equivalent to another species of water, and that we can have something. We can have the sacrament of baptism applied to another species which cannot survive or healthily survive contact with liquid H2O, but they could survive contact with what one could reasonably refer to as water, or the equivalent for their species. Okay. Why have I yammered on about this? I'll get to it in a minute. Because it is relevant to Mass Effect, because of the Eucharist, and because of Turians and Quarians. First, though, I want to draw attention to this really, really cool little Easter egg. Ploba, this is a planet. Active scans by survey ships have returned tantalizing indications of a massive solid structures deep within the atmosphere. Too regular a pattern to be anything natural. Some believe Ploba is a Jupiter brain, planet-sized supercomputer. Adherents of this theory have fruitlessly beamed signals towards sunken megastructures, hoping to get the machine's attention. Others believe an ancient spacefaring race disposed of their weapons of war by dumping them into the planet. The last attempt to reach and salvage Ploba's deep anomalies went tragically wrong, ended with the crew of 12 being trapped and crushed in the gas giant's lower atmosphere. Fascinating. This never becomes relevant again. But it was just sort of left there as a fascinating little tidbit that people can speculate about as to what the heck is going on there. This is also, in my view, what makes Mass Effect such a great setting, especially a setting to write within, because all of this was left for the purpose of developing future games, future stories. It's delightful. It's fantastic. I love it. Anyway, so to our other question, we have the question of the Eucharist. Now, this one is more relevant for our concerns, right? Because the Eucharist involves eating and drinking, eating and or drinking, I guess I should say, the body and blood of Christ, which retains the accidents of bread and wine. So, in other words, for purposes of digestion, let's say, the elements of the Eucharist have all the relevant qualities of wheat bread and grape wine. And it has been determined that it has to be wheat bread and grape wine. So again, we encounter this same question. What if we encounter a species that cannot ingest wheat or grapes, or alcohol for that matter? Can they partake in the Eucharist? In other words, Turians and Quarians, who are made of a fundamentally different biochemistry, they have their amino acids are dextro amino acids, whereas ours are levo amino acids. I've been told that Mass Effect exaggerates the effects of this difference, that realistically a dextro amino acid based life form could eat levo amino acid based proteins. It would just be they just wouldn't get any nutrition from it. Just wouldn't be able to digest it, but it wouldn't like poison them. In Mass Effect, it's depicted as this would basically immediately kill a Turian or a Quarian. Okay, so questions arise. All right, fine. Would they be able to partake of the Eucharist? Well, it is only present in proteins, first of all. Amino acids are only present in proteins. So, are there proteins present in the elements of the Eucharist? I don't believe so. I don't know that. And if there are, we could presumably do something similar to how we make low-gluten hosts, which do have gluten, but they are within the tolerance of anyone but someone who has the most severe case of celiac disease. We may be able to do something similar by basically eliminating any of the proteins with the relevant amino acids. Hey, let's see what this is. Land on a ship. This is that missing ship, if I recall. Let's have Caden and Liara. I think biotics are going to be handy here. Fun's out, fun's out. It's really creepy and silent. In any case, right, if we are capable of producing sufficiently low, hosts with sufficiently low levels of protein.
Intruders! Kill the hostage!
What? More violence. That's damping. Oh, great.
I will destroy you. Go, go, go!
I will destroy everyone. Yeah, everyone. I will destroy you in the chat because I can't move.
You must die. I will destroy you. I will destroy you.
There's way too many biotics just flinging around in this. All right. Anyway, that was fun.
Clear.
I didn't get any "I will destroy yous" in the chat. Where the hell am I going? Here we go. This where we're going? Yeah. Okay.
See how it is? You write letters and everyone ignores you. Force is the only thing people appreciate.
So how about if I kill Chairman Burns and finish this charade?
Please, I was trying to help you people.
Let's not do anything we're all gonna regret.
Why not? What have we got to lose? Since the chairman here decided that we didn't get reparations, we've got nothing left to live for.
But I've changed my mind. Seeing you all, it's clear that you all deserve...
You had your chance. Some L2s are nearly crippled from side effects of the implants, but you voted against reparations.
Think about this. Burns is the one man who can help you.
Yes, if you release me, I can take another look at the reparations request.
What? We're supposed to trust you?
I'm an L2 like you. Trust me. The commander can make sure that Burns follows through.
Sure, you promise us freedom and say everything will be fine, but as soon as we surrender, you'll double-cross us.
I'm not promising to let you go. All I'm saying is that Burns will take another look. Right, Burns?
Absolutely. I had no idea that the L2 biotics were this desperate. If I'd known, the reparations will come. For whatever it's worth, I promise that.
You're right. I don't want to die. Maybe something will happen this time. We surrender.
Thank you, Commander. I thought I was dead when they took me. I'll see to it that the reparations discussion is reopened. I didn't know they were so desperate.
A 5th Fleet cruiser will be by shortly to pick you and the prisoners up.
Why is everything so wobbly all of a sudden?
Thank you, Commander. I thought I was dead when they took me.
Anyway, hope you're enjoying Solitaire. Don't need that. So, what I was saying is, presumably, now, that said, if we are incapable of producing protein-free elements of the Eucharist, there may be a possibility, and I don't want to say that this is in fact possible because I don't know the relevant canon law and whether it is whether it's exactly the whether it's changeable or not. But I think that we might relevantly be able to say, let's put it this way, that we can make the same kind of consideration that we did with water with respect to the elements of the Eucharist. We can ask whether wheat and grapes mean a particular biological species, or if they mean a particular...
Message coming in.
Oh, here we go.
Patching it through.
Thank you for dealing with the hostage situation, Commander. Chairman Burns was quite impressed by the way you resolved the situation peacefully. Your assistance above and beyond the formal duties has been noted, Commander. 5th Fleet out.
It's like, we surrender. Great, don't look at all the dead bodies of your friends on the way out. Yeah, well, that was their fault. They are the ones who started shooting, and we will destroy you-ing. Turnabout is fair play. Next system. Or next cluster. Oh, there's only the one in here? Okay. Amazon it is. But the alternative, all right, the alternative to wheat and grapes being a particular biological species or family.
Incoming signal from 5th Fleet
another
HQ on the Citadel.
Commander Shepard, something uncomfortable has just come up.
Oh no, not this.
In the First Contact War, we fired a lot of espionage probes into Turian space. We just received a mission complete burst from one of them.
Where's it been in the meantime?
No idea. Lost in transit. These probes were built in a hurry after First Contact.
What makes this uncomfortable?
When these probes were launched, we didn't have any idea who we were fighting. We didn't want to risk aliens examining our technology. The probe has a demo nuke built in. A 20-kiloton tactical fusion warhead. About equal to the bomb dropped on Hiroshima back in the 20th.
If somebody finds that probe, tampers with it, you don't need me to finish, Commander.
I understand this must be handled, but I don't have anyone trained to deal with this sort of thing, sir.
I know. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. These probes have been classified for 26 years. The Council will call fusion bomb booby traps dangerous and irresponsible. The Alliance would face censure if they find this probe.
No.
I'm asking you because the Normandy can get on site quickly and quietly. It's in the Voyager cluster.
It's in the Voyager cluster. That's the opposite side of the Alliance from Turian space. How did it get there?
I don't know. It's possible someone recovered it safely and brought it there. It's also possible it got very badly lost. It could have been wandering the relay network since the war.
We'll get on it immediately, Admiral. And we'll be discreet.
I appreciate that, Commander. Good luck. Fifth Fleet out.
Well, so, Ms. McCoy, this is why everyone thinks humans are insane. Well, we are, so that's fair. Perfectly fair. I'm not going to land yet. I still want to finish talking about this before I actually go and jump in to do this. So, there is, of course, the possibility, as I mentioned, that wheat and grapes are something more like an archaeological category rather than a biological species. Or, not architectural, agricultural. Is that what I said? Whatever. An agricultural category. Wheats are a kind of grain plant, right? And of course, it's entirely possible, or it might be entirely possible. I don't want to give the wrong impression that this is in fact the case. It may be possible, at least, that there is a wheat equivalent native to Trebia, the Turian homeworld, or to Rannoch, the Quarian homeworld. If that is the case, then presumably we could have elements which were made of native life forms, native crops. And so those could be properly consecrated and would transubstantiate and become the body and blood of Jesus Christ. Okay, if that's possible. Again, I may be wrong about on my estimations there of what counts as wheat and what counts as grapes, what counts as bread and what counts as wine. So if I am of course making a mistake there, then hey, I'm making a mistake there. It is worth noting that this is also super relevant when it comes to growing bread and wine, right? Producing bread and wine, particularly in inhospitable places, or if we wind up colonizing other planets like we do in Mass Effect. If there is already a native ecosystem, we would not want to introduce invasive agricultural species. And so it would be, well, let's put it this way, it would certainly be at least much more convenient if we could grow native species that would count as wheat and count as grapes. That would count as traditional earth foods for sacramental purposes. Now, that's, again, rampant speculation, and I could be way off base here. I'm not a canon lawyer. I'm not even a sacramental theologian, but these are at least the questions that we would need to consider. Now, there are obviously other sacraments that I can talk about. I'm going to hold off on matrimony for once our romance path gets a little bit further, and to talk about, marrying an alien. We talked about baptizing an alien this time. Another time we might talk about marrying an alien. I have an article from a long time ago on that. I'm going to try and republish it somewhere that's public, that everybody can see. If I'm able to do that, I'll put a link to it here in the description of this stream, and I'll certainly share it from the Facebook page. So if I do find out a good way of getting up either a blog or a website or something, I will have that up available to take a look at. There are questions and problems that I didn't address in that piece, so I may have to update it, or I may have to make a follow-up as well. But for now, that's an interesting topic. The other question then becomes, so there's another sacrament, for which the question has to arise whether other species could receive it, and that is holy orders. Could other species be priests? The relevant question here, I think, is, first of all, the matter of the sacrament is a male human, a male person, an adult male, also an adult male baptized human being. Okay. That arises a couple of questions. What is the meaning of human being in that sentence? Is another species capable of acting in persona Christi, in the person of Christ? If Christ was incarnate only as a biological human, can a member of another species portray Christ in the relevant way? I would think yes. At least if Christ's sacrifice is applicable to other biological species. And again, I think I would argue that yes, it would be. Which that I'll argue once we get down to the planet, because that's its own separate thing. The other question is male. Could an Asari or a Hanar, who I think are also monogendered, but I could be completely wrong about that because no one knows a damn thing about Hanar. But could an Asari be a priest if their species only has one gender, and so male and female are meaningless to them? That is an open question, I think. And it may depend on place within society. It may depend on what one would consider gender roles. But even that doesn't really exist in a Asari society, so not really. So it's hard to say. And I don't have an answer for it. But it's an interesting question, if nothing else. All right, so let's land, take care of this tactical nuke that humans decided it would be a good idea to strap to. Well, we got to take Arturian. It would be a great idea to strap a tactical nuke onto a probe, a spy probe that we were sending to say hi to the Turians. Humans are absolutely insane. That goes without question. I happen to know we need snipers for this mission, and Ashley and Garrus also seem good for story reasons, so let's bring them. Alright. That's where we're going. That's gorgeous. Ooh, it's even swirling. Nice. It's a red giant, too. Wow. Alright, so the application of Christ's sacrifice to non-biological humans, or biological non-humans, let's say. This comes down to the effects of original sin and how that is promulgated and where that comes from. If original sin is promulgated purely through generation, in other words, through descent, through biological descent, through children, having children, passed on from parent to child, then it would seem that no, that other species would have to have sinned independently, and that God would have to save other species, each individually. However, the specific method of passing... I'm just destroying crates because it's fun. The specific method of passing down original sin by descent is, I believe, open to theological speculation. We can ask that question, and we can propose different answers to that question.
That's the source of the signal.
Yep.
Suspicious.
Yeah, this thing didn't crash. Somebody moved it here.
They may not know what they have. Let's find it before they set it off.
Affirmative.
Let's make sure everybody's got their good weapons out. Let's go with shotgun. All right. So in that case, if we are going to look and see that different species would have to be affected the same way. If we are to say that that is possible, then we have to search for an alternative mechanism by which original sin is passed along. And I think we can look to an existing theological concept that that all of creation falls as a result of Adam's sin. It's not, in this context, it is not simply that human beings fall. Right? It's that all creation suffers on account of original sin. We usually see this in the context of discussions of evolution. Right? We might have trouble reconciling death before the fall of Adam. But of course, again, there are of course other solutions to that problem in particular that we can maybe talk about another time if it becomes relevant. But for our purposes, I think it's worth noting that there are at least possible alternatives. If all of creation falls as a result of the fall of Adam, and the fall of Adam is...
What the hell?
Oops. If the fall of Adam is sufficiently symbolically significant, then I'm going to pause here for a moment so we can keep talking about this. Then it is the fall of our first parents, and by our first parents I mean the first human beings, meaning the first biological human beings chronologically, but then also the first human beings in the sense of the representatives for all the symbolic representatives of all human beings, whether those are biologically human or otherwise. If that is the case, and all people, all persons, all rational animals fall as a result of a primordial choice. And if it is the same fall qualitatively, it is the same choice made. And that is promulgated, possibly not by direct descent, but by, let's say, communication of a nature, of human nature, so to speak, of being a rational animal, of this particular corruption of the imago Dei, the image and likeness of God. If that is the case, then the fall of Adam, whether that is strictly literal or if there are figurative elements to it, that can, I think, have further reaching effects, and can have effects across other biological species. So what this means is, if original sin applies universally to all rational animals, to all humans in the relevant sense, in the metaphysical context, then what that means is that the salvation of all people, all persons, all rational animals, can be affected by the same action in the same way through the same sacramental process. Okay, that's a hell of a lot of speculation, but I think that it is, let's say, the most plausible way of reconciling this, at least this particular circumstance, this circumstance with different biological species. Reconciling that with what we know of salvation history here on Earth. Now, this requires a lot of fiddling and tweaking and maybe even some redefinitions. So that is maybe uncomfortable and maybe difficult to reconcile, but I think it can be done, and this is something like how it could be done. Now, there's a question of whether we can have true biological human beings who do not have their genealogical descent from Adam. Or not biological, sorry. Whether we can have true men, in other words, human beings, rational animals, who do not have their descent from Adam, their genealogical descent from Adam, in the relevant sense, such that they suffer from original sin. We would say, now, Humani Generis, Papal Encyclical, linked below, will say that we have to affirm that original sin is as a result of Adam's fall in particular. Okay, I think we can still say that if there are human beings who do not have their genealogical descent from Adam, In other words, I think we can, in this sense, reconcile what's called polygenism. In other words, more than one genealogical Adam, more than one first parent in that sense, with this same proper understanding of original sin. Now, it's worth noting, I am speculating about what has been hotly discussed in Catholic theological circles by a lot of people who know a lot more than the subject than I do for 70 years now. And I'm, chatting about it at midnight-ish on a stream playing a video game. So I'm not doing this issue justice, and I eventually hope to, but it's way down on my list of research interests. But it's certainly on my list of research interests because I do find this subject fascinating, and especially its applicability to extraterrestrial life. In part because it is taught by the ordinary magisterium, let's say. It was defined at the condemnations of 1277, Bishop of Paris and associated bishops conferences, associated bishops, not conferences technically. That it is theologically possible for God to have created other Earths is the term. What presumably that means in the context is other planets with ostensibly humans, with other people. God could have created, in the same cosmos that we inhabit, more than one Earth, for lack of a better term, right? Life-sustaining, human-populated planet. And if the Magisterium teaches that, then we have to hold open the possibility of other planets with what we can call theological humans. Right? Humans in the rational animal, in the Imago Dei, presumably with original sin sense. So we got to reconcile that somehow. And this sort of thing, science fiction, is a great way of speculating as to how we might be able to solve such problems. All right, so let's go blow up a nuke.
You have me at a disadvantage.
My name is Ilanos Halliot. I doubt you know it. Who do you think runs the Terminus clan, Shepard, huh? Thousands of pirates, slavers, criminals of every stripe?
I think this guy was originally supposed to be a Batarian, but they hadn't put Batarians in the base game yet. I'm disappointed they didn't retcon him as a Batarian at some point, but oh well.
I don't study the internal politics of pirate bands.
The strongest leads. The one who kills the most men, seizes the most ships, pillages the most colonies. 3 years ago, I was the strongest. I used my influence to assemble a fleet. We would drive your kind out of the Verge.
You're the one behind the attack on Elysium.
I was the motivator, the instigator, the one who promised glory and riches for sacking the largest human colony in the cluster. The one blamed when it failed. Failed! I was ruined when your kind held against the Blitz. What better way to recover my reputation than by eliminating the first human Spectre?
My crew will come for me.
Let them. We'll be ready. An Alliance warship would make a fine prize. Oh, and if you haven't noticed, the ores here are laced with heavy metals. I'm afraid your suit radios aren't powerful enough to transmit out.
We'll find a way out of here.
I rather doubt that. Goodbye, Shepard.
Orders, Commander.
We've got air and light, and the Normandy's still in orbit. Let's look for another way out.
Yay! Omnigel! Yeah, I love that later on, in the later games, they just sort of make fun of that by saying, I miss the old days when you can just slap Omnigel on things to hack it. Yeah, Ms. McCoy says, even his dialogue seems to point to the fact that he's supposed to be a Batarian, talking about humans like he isn't one. Yeah, I just kind of like to think he is a Batarian. Maybe it's just a filter on the hologram or something. I don't know. It makes so much more sense for him to be a Batarian. Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be that easy either. That was just because I have 999 Omnigel. Because this is my 4th playthrough with this character. Third playthrough with this character. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, let's, both of you guys switch to sniper rifles. Because of that. Okay, that didn't work. Are you kidding me? Damn it.
I think we're good, Shepard.
I'll just let them... Can't do that, can I? Oof, that's really bad. Can't you just guys snipety snipe? Well, this is very silly. There we go. Is that everybody? There, done. Yeah, I wasn't able to change to War Hero, but I was still apparently at the... Oh, no, I wasn't. No, that's right. Yeah. Okay, so my my canon Shepard, as far as my head canon is concerned, Shepard was at Elysium for the Skillian Blitz that they were just talking about. Happened to be on shore leave, and so when Kellum and a bunch of pirates attacked, she basically helped fend off the invasion on foot with apparently somebody's rifle because she was on vacation. Which is why everyone thinks that Shepard's a badass, because she's a badass, and she's like single-handedly fought a war. Ooh, Lancer 10. I don't need it.
En route.
Yeah. Yeah, but that is basically my canon version of Shepard. Primarily just because it fits the narrative, I think, far better than what did I pick? Sole Survivor, I think, where her squad was just wiped out by a Thresher Maw, which is that's awful, but it doesn't have as much narrative importance as War Hero does. Alright, so I think I'm going to finish up this, if I can find where that's supposed to... There we go. If I can find where this is supposed to be. I'm going to finish up this, and I think I'm going to call it for the night, because it is... we are just about at midnight, so I'm going to wrap this up. If anybody has anything else, any other questions about anything I've been talking about, or anything else you want me to talk about or discuss, getting close to your last chance to throw it in the chat. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to talk about, game-related or related to any of the other stuff I've been discussing. If not, then I'm going to wrap up a couple of things, going back to the Normandy, talk to some people, and I think we'll call it a night, because I still need to talk to Joker, if nothing else. And I think we will I think I'll put up a poll and see what people think as to whether I should keep going with Mass Effect 1, because I kind of would like to. But at this point, I have gotten my entire squad, so I've gone through a lot of the things I wanted to talk about. So I may next time it might be a good chance to switch to another game. So I'm going to put up another poll on the Facebook page. So if you do want to see me play more of Mass Effect, go and find that poll. Let me know. Otherwise, if you prefer me to switch to something else, let me know that as well. If you have something in particular in mind, feel free to put a comment. I'm going to put some suggestions in the post there. I'm thinking, because I can always go back to Red Dead Redemption 2. I've got that started. We're in a couple of sessions in there. Alternatively, I can start. I was thinking of starting KOTOR 2, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, for which you really don't have to have any idea of the first game. So it was a good one. It has a lot of interesting philosophical themes. Not all of which I fully agree with, obviously, but that's something to talk about. Thank you, Kylie, for Happy Teacher Appreciation Week. To anybody else as well who winds up listening to this and watching it. Thank you to you as well, other teachers and my teachers and others. I want to chat with Joker for a little bit. So if there are any other questions,
I prefer gold
anything else
to silver, for
free
my
to put it
medal.
in.
I figured you'd recommend me for one since I pulled your boots out of the fire.
If we present you with a medal, you'll end up sitting on stage listening to politicians make speeches for a couple of hours.
That's a good point. They'd probably make me shave, too. I spent the last 7 weeks working on this baby. No medal's worth that. So, Commander, why don't you tell me why you're really here?
That's pathetic. Just saying.
How's the Normandy performing? Is she everything they said she'd be?
She's the best ship in the fleet. If you've got a pilot who knows how to handle her. Balance isn't what you'd expect. Takes a while to get used to that oversized drive core we got stuffed in the back, and her power can sneak up on you if you're not careful. The Normandy's probably too much ship for your average Alliance pilot, Commander. Lucky for you, I'm anything but average.
I like to know my crew. Mind if I ask you a few questions?
I can see where this is going. You did a background check on me, didn't you? Well, I'll tell you the same thing I told the captain. You want me as your pilot. I'm not good. I'm not even great. I am the best damn helmsman in the Alliance fleet. Top of my class in flight school, I earned that. All those commendations in my file, I earned every single one. Those weren't given to me as charity for my disease.
I'm sorry, Joker. I didn't even know you were sick.
You mean you didn't know? Oh, crap. Okay, I've got Vrolik syndrome, brittle bone disease. The bones in my legs never develop properly. They're basically hollow, too much force and they'll shatter. Even with crutches and my leg braces, it's hard to get around. One wrong step and crack! It's very dramatic, but I've learned to manage my condition, Commander. Put the Normandy in my hands and I'll make her dance for you. Just don't ask me to get up and dance unless, you like the sound of snapping shin bones.
I need to know more about this Vrolik syndrome if I'm putting my ship in your hands.
Yeah, of course you do. It's an extremely rare condition. Nobody knows exactly what causes it. Genetic, maybe. It's treatable, but there's no cure. They classify my case as moderate to severe. I was born with over a dozen fractures, hip, thighs, ankles. My bones were already breaking in the womb. 100 years ago, I wouldn't have survived past my first year. Lucky for me, modern medical science has turned me into a productive member of society.
You're not gonna break a bone trying to fly the ship, are you?
I don't fly with my feet, Commander, so I'm fine as long as I'm in this chair. I gotta be real careful when I get up to take a piss, though. I can do my job as well as anyone on the ship. Better, actually. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, it is absolutely hilarious that he just
I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable.
ratted on himself.
Let's talk about something else.
By making stupid assumptions.
Yeah. Why does everyone call you Joker?
It's a lot shorter than saying Alliance Flight Lieutenant Jeff Moreau. Plus, I love to make little children laugh.
I was just thinking how much you remind me of Santa Claus.
Look, I didn't pick the name. One of the instructors in flight school used to bug me about never smiling. She started calling me Joker, and it stuck.
Why didn't you ever smile?
Hey, I worked my ass off in flight school, Commander. The world's not gonna hand you anything if you go around grinning like an idiot. By the end of the year, I was the best pilot in the academy, even better than the instructors, and everybody knew it. They'd all got their asses kicked by the sickly kid with the creaky little legs. One guess who was smiling at graduation?
How'd you end up joining the Alliance?
Look, if you're looking for an inspirational tale of the crippled kid overcoming impossible odds, you're gonna be disappointed. My mother was a civilian contractor working for the Alliance. I basically grew up on the Arcturus station back when they were building up the fleets. Spend all that time around Alliance ships, there's a good chance you'll end up going to the Academy.
I have to go.
Alright, see ya.
Alright. So I think that'll about wrap us up. So, I'm going to end it there. I'm going to say goodnight, everybody. And like I said, I hope to have up a... I'm shooting to have something like a blog or maybe a WordPress site or something like that. I'm looking into a locals platform, which is another social media network, and also a donation platform if you're interested in that sort of thing. I'm looking into getting that set up, and I think that may have something equivalent to a blog as well, so I can put articles up on there. So look forward to that sort of thing. If you are interested in reading some of my more complicated work, more than just me talking on stream, or even my my pre-recorded lectures, that'll be a thing for you to look forward to. So, otherwise, hopefully I'll see everybody next week, and I hope all of you have a good evening. Have a good one. Bye.